Good evening, everyone. For the sake of the record, this is Eric Davidson, Chair of the RTD Board speaking. I will now call to order the Tuesday, September 24th board meeting of the RTD Board of Directors. We are convened as of 5:32 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. My apologies there. I would respectfully ask everyone to remain muted tonight unless you are recognized to speak. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. As the board has moved to in-person meetings for our monthly gatherings, please note that committee meetings of the RTD Board of Directors are still being held remotely via Zoom and are audio and video recorded. The meeting minutes, along with the unofficial minutes of the meeting recordings and unofficial minutes will be posted as soon as practicable on the board's website. Please visit rtd-denver.com, and a live stream of this meeting is also available via RTD's YouTube page. During tonight's meeting, we will also be providing communication access real-time translation, also known as CART. Anyone who would like to access this service should please send an email to the RTD board office at the email address rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com, and a link will be provided. Additionally, the CART transcript can be automatically translated into Spanish for anyone who would like to access a live transcript of this meeting in Spanish. This time, we'll now move to the Pledge of Allegiance, and Director Lewis, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. And at this time, I'd now like to ask Director Busick, would you please read the land acknowledgement?
Yes, thank you. The RTD Board of Directors acknowledges that the land on which our buses and trains operate is the traditional territory of the Ute, Cheyenne, Arapaho, and other contemporary tribal nations that are historically tied to these lands. We honor our indigenous elders who have traveled, inhabited, and stewarded these mountains, hills, and plains throughout generations. May this acknowledgement demonstrate a commitment to working to dismantle the ongoing legacies of inequity of the Native and all historically oppressed peoples, and recognize their current and future contributions in the district as we move forward.
Thank you, sir. I will now call the roll. Treasurer Bouquet, he will be arriving late this evening. I'll ask the board office to just help me note for the sake of the record if I miss it when he joins. He's currently absent. Director Broom?
Present.
Director Busick?
Here.
First Vice Chair Catlin?
Here.
Director Deschel? I believe he will also be joining. He's currently absent. Second Vice Chair Geisinger?
Here.
Secretary Guzman? Present. Director Harwick?
Here.
Director Lewis?
Present.
Director Rosenthal?
Present.
Director Ruscia is an excused absence. Director Sloan?
Here.
Director Tisdale? Currently absent. Director Whitmore?
Here.
And this is Chair Davidson speaking. I am also here. That is 11 directors present, 4 absent. We have a quorum. This time, I'd now like to ask Director Whitmore to please read aloud the Statement of Employee Appreciation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Regional Transportation District Board of Directors recognizes that RTD's dedicated workforce is the lifeblood of the agency. Every day, RTD employees do extraordinary things to make lives better through connections. We honor their work of delivering transit excellence, service, and value to the community, especially demonstrated during difficult and stressful moments. May the actions taken by the Board of Directors demonstrate our profound gratitude, commitment, and support toward all RTD employees.
Thank you, sir. We'll now move to the next portion of our agenda, which is retiree awards. One of the many rewarding duties of serving on this board of directors is to recognize the RTD retirees And the time has come for us to do that this evening, to recognize all of those employees who have served their community and this agency, making connections and making lives better through those connections. At this time, I'd like to read the names of employees who have retired since June. We'll have a round of applause all at once. And then we do have one retiree here this evening that we'll be recognizing. This evening, where those employees who have retired since June are David Cook, bus operator, 30 years. Gene Doss, division supervisor, 23 years. Cheryl Eaton, bus operator, 17 years. Zuo Guo, senior Oracle developer, 20 years. Janet Hoon, executive assistant, capital programs, 18 years. Kim Lucero, bus operator, 28 years. Brian Varney, service technician, 23 years. And Don Young, senior manager, treasury, 45 years. All at once, a round of applause, please. So at this time, we do have a 45-year employee who has joined us this evening. And I would like to ask our Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Doug McLeod, to please introduce Mr. Don Young at this time, please.
Good evening, and thank you for the nice introduction. This is Don Young. Don has been here, it says 45 years, but I believe it's 45 years and 8 months. So rounded up to 46 years. I tried to get him to stay until 50, and that was his goal, but we're going to miss Don a lot. As you can imagine, Don's been here since we were just a small bus company. He's been in charge of the department, made huge changes along with new rail, all the expansion that we've done. We've added all sorts of new technology over the years that Don has been instrumental in putting in place, as well as policies and procedures. I think your staff is about 40 or so? 44 folks that maintain all of our ticket vending machines, our pass vending machines, our fare boxes, thousands of fare boxes on the buses, and then 1,000 or so ABT, account-based ticketing validators on buses, as well as another 200 platform validators, as well as collecting all the cash that comes in from fares that are paid. So millions of dollars. Don's probably been responsible for collecting, he and his team, billions of dollars over those 45 years. Anyway, Don did a great job transitioning, made it very smooth when he left at the end of August. So I want to thank him for sticking around to do that, but I really want to thank him for all of his years of service and for just being a great person. He's been a great servant to RTD, but he's just a really good person and dedicated, easy to work with, and we're all going to miss him on the finance team. So I'll let Don say a few words now.
Well, good evening, everybody. Again, like I said, 45 years, that's a tremendous amount of time, but to me, it didn't seem like it was 45 years at all. I started with RTD when I was just a young kid, and RTD was, I've used this term a lot, it was like a mom and pop organization, real small, didn't have any rail, had a couple of divisions and all bus. But yeah, what Doug had mentioned about all the transition activity and the technology that we've moved into rail, that's been a big part of the whole fare collection piece that I've been involved with. So I just want to thank everybody, and RTD's been a fantastic place to work. I've told many people how much I've enjoyed working here, and all the people that I've met and all the people that I've been involved with. So I thank you, and I'm on to the next chapter of my life, and people ask me all the time, well, what are you going to do? I said, well, pretty much whatever I want to do now. So I don't have a time clock anymore. I don't have to worry about being in any particular meetings any specific time. So I'm enjoying that a lot, and really looking forward to moving ahead with that. So thank you very much.
If everyone could stay seated, we're going to just take a brief moment to take a few pictures, and we'll be right back. All right. Well, once again, thank you, Mr. Young. Couldn't quite make 46, I guess, as we found out from Mr. McLeod there. But thank you for all of your service, and thank you to all of our retirees for your commitment to the agency and the public, an agency that delivers tens of millions of rides every year. Thank you very much. All right, at this time, we're going to move to our public participation period. This is open to anyone who would like to address the Board of Directors, as we have both in-person and remote attendees. In-person comments will go first, followed by those who are participating online. For those attending in person, please come up to the podium when your name is called. If you have not already signed up to speak and would like to do so, please approach the podium when I call for any additional speakers. For those attending virtually or online, if you wish to speak and have not already done so, you can raise your virtual hand on Zoom, or you can press *9 if you're dialed in on phone. Staff will unmute you when it is your turn to speak. If you're dialed in, press *6 to toggle your mute settings. Please bear in mind that by participating in this process, you are being recorded. If you do not wish to be recorded, then you may submit your comments in writing. If any speaker has documentation or reference materials for the board, or if any member of the public would like to submit written comments, you can email those materials to the board office using the email address rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com. During this time, the board does not offer any direct comments or responses. However, if you'd like to be contacted regarding your public comment, please send an email to the same email address, rtd.boardoffice@rtd-denver.com. Before calling on the speakers, I'll just note for the sake of the record, we are now joined by Director Tisdale and are at 12 present and 3 absent. Speakers, when you are called upon, please begin your remarks by stating your names, and then you will have up to 3 minutes to provide comment. I will let you know when you have reached your 3 minutes. Starting with our in-person speakers, I will now call on our first speaker, who is Chaz Davis. If you could please approach the podium, introduce yourself, and you will have 3 minutes.
Good evening, GM Johnson and the RTD Board of Directors. My name is Chaz Davis. I live in Southwest Centennial with my fiance, my 2.5-year-old son, and we have another baby boy coming in just a month's time. And I've been coming to these meetings now since January, really talking about one issue in particular as it pertains to access on demand. And I know that a number of my colleagues with the National Federation of the Blind are here to speak on a number of issues as well. But I do want to just continue my conversation about access on demand and multiple stops and its removal. So when I moved back to Colorado in 2022, I was able to find myself eligible for paratransit services with Access-a-Ride. I was very lucky to be able to use the Access on Demand service as well. And that service really worked extremely well for me for over a year with no issue. And at the end of last year, the proverbial rug was pulled underneath me, and the multiple stops that I used almost every single day to take my son to daycare and then go from daycare to work was gone. It left me having to order another ride. Sometimes those cars would pull up for whatever reason. I can't comment as to the reason, but sometimes the cars would cancel and drive away. I'd have to wait another 20 minutes for another car to show up. And there I am just standing on the curb in the cold, in other inclement weather, just waiting for a car to come. It doesn't make any sense to me in a fiscal sense. Doesn't make any sense to me as it pertains to the ADA or Title VI. It doesn't make any sense to me for any reason as to why this service, the multi-stops, that was available to us for a number of months with no issue, was taken away. and it was taken away without any data behind it or data that was shared with us. And I am requesting that the multi-stop feature is re-implemented until we can come to a point where there is a decision that is made and decisions that are made that are data-driven decisions. And that is my request to all of you, and I'm just really hoping that this is something that we can move forward with. Thank you for your time, and have a good night.
Thank you very much for your comments. Our next speaker is Jessica Beecham.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jessica Beecham, and I serve as president of the National Federation of the Blind of Colorado. Over the last week, we have held 3 listening sessions with our membership. The overwhelming sentiment has been that Access on Demand service has become a significant tool that many of our members use to work, go to school, run errands, enjoy leisure activities, and fully engage in all aspects of society in a manner that is convenient and timely. We are very concerned by the quick time frame that is being proposed to make changes to the Access on Demand service. The recommendations that were made by the peer review that was released last week are not supported by data. These changes that will significantly impact the lives of riders with disabilities should be thoughtfully considered with collaboration from stakeholders, much as was done when the fare structure of RTD was changed. Additionally, we believe that significant changes to the Access on Demand service should not be made until RTD addresses the egregiously high administrative costs currently associated with the Access on Demand services. These could likely be significantly decreased through technology-based solutions that would automate features that are currently being managed with human power. We respectfully ask that the RTD Board of Directors not move into any changes with little thought and less data. We know that when decisions have been made and rushed through like this, often they have not yielded the results that were desired. If this board truly wants to make a hasty change, we as an organization would strongly encourage replenishing the fixed route transit system back to the level that it was prior to pandemic so that more people would be able to use public transit to live the lives that they want. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments and for joining us. Our next speaker will be Aaron Daly.
Am I here? Hello, my name is Erin Daly. I live in Englewood, Colorado, and I am a current Access-a-Ride and Access on Demand user, and I just wanted to speak regarding the peer review. I definitely understand that some changes need to be made per the peer review. I think that this service, I want to commend the directors and RTD for doing this because we're all here right now because it works. It works, it's amazing. It gives us equity comparable to what everyone can use on this system. And we are able to, on demand, go to a doctor's appointment. I can go to work. I work in an office pack, and you don't want to see me going around in circles around cars and stuff for a really long time trying to find the building. What I think that we need to do is we need to focus on the data and see what is going to make the most difference. When this first came out, there was a $2 base fare for this, and it was removed. I'm not sure why it was removed because I think many of us were happy to pay that base fare initially, and when it was removed, we thought it was because the system was working incredibly well and everything was going okay. I think a base fare we can definitely look at. It could be fair for it. But I think when we look at things like boundaries, 3/4 of a mile, what we're looking at is at a system that is already manually run. And when we look at the numbers of how this is actually working with the times that the bus routes are on and 3/4 of a mile, we're going to be adding more to the bloat that's already in the administrative budget. This budget, which I believe is about 25% of the budget for these rides that are actually being taken. And before we make any decisions on what we should cut, we need to see at what these cuts will do, because I can't go and figure out whether the exact stop I'm going to is 3/4 of a mile. If this isn't going to be geofenced, if it's not going to be anything like that, it's not going to make sense. And we're going to have a lot of people that are going to be suspended from the system through no fault of their own because they're using the system that has worked for them. And if we have it done manually, all it's going to do is increase and eat up the savings that we could have from, I believe, less than 6% of people that are going outside that 3/4 of a mile. So I think we need to look at what the financials are looking at this and how it's directly going to impact that. Given that I don't see a lot of data that supports many of these changes, and I think that we need to look at the numbers and take our time and do that before we take away a system that has truly created equity in a Colorado for all in this community. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments and for joining us. Our next speaker is Maureen Neitfeld.
Okay. Thank you very much for allowing me to make a comment. My name is Maureen Neitfeld, and I am a user of the Access on Demand system. I am a person that has multiple disabilities. I have had 37 surgeries. I have a kidney transplant. I have a spinal cord injury. I'm a person that lives with cancer and is on chemotherapy. I am also a person that works full-time and is a volunteer for my community as second vice president of the National Federation of the Blind of Colorado. And I am also a parent of a 6-year-old little boy. And this Access on Demand has been absolutely amazing for me to get back and forth to work, for me to get to doctor's appointments, for me to go to radiation, for me to participate as an active parent, taking my son to soccer, karate, swim, school. And any reduction in this system would deeply impact our community. And as disabled Coloradans, we deserve equity. Your Access-a-Ride system, I'm sorry, it's a broken system, and the Access on Demand works. It's absolutely fantastic. Last week, I walked into a meeting at work and got a phone call from my son's school that he split his head open on the playground. And like any other parent, I rushed to his school, calling an Uber, got to his school in under 15 minutes, picked up my son, took him to urgent care, where he was treated for his head being split open, and then caught another Uber where I could bring him home in a safe, comfortable ride after a traumatic experience. We need to have on-demand transportation, and we ask that you thoughtfully approach any reduction in the system and thoughtfully make changes that are appropriate. And please do not rush this timeline, as we will be negatively impacted. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments and for joining us. Our next speaker is Deshawn Spears.
Hello, everyone. My name is Deshawn Spears, and I live in the Littleton area, and I am a father of an 8-year-old son. And I just want to say that we love having the Access on Demand. For me, it gives me, it makes me feel independent. I'm able to go to work. I can take my son to school, and pick him up. I can, just like you guys with your cars, having this access is great because I feel empowered. And I just want to have you guys to just make sure that you guys don't cut, think about, what this the cut might do to this program. And so thanks a lot.
Thank you very much for your comments and for joining us this evening. Our next speaker is Kevin Kovasius. Apologies if I mispronounced your name.
Hi, my name is Kevin Kovacs, and I live near Cherry Creek. I work at Buckley Space Force Base, and the paratransit is not an effective way for us to do that without the on-demand. At the last several times I've taken fixed route, which I've had to have somebody with me because the ramps on the bus aren't all set heights. There's no standard how high or how steep the ramps are to get up. The last time the bus pulled next or to where the ramp let out over halfway into the sidewalk. So getting off, I tried to get their attention to help me. They had to move or help me off of there, and he just kind of stared at me. So I tried to get off of there and flipped over off the sidewalk, fell out of the chair, and had to call somebody to come get me out because the bus driver took off after that. So. The on-demand service has been amazing since we've started since we moved back up here and where they actually have it. So I would highly recommend, looking at the data more closely and actually how it's going to affect the community. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments and for joining us. Our next speaker is Cody Bear.
Good evening, RTD Board of Directors. My name is Cody Bear, and I live in Littleton, Colorado, and like the majority of the others tonight, I'm an Access on Demand user. First of all, I want to applaud the Regional Transportation District for being innovative and coming up with Access on Demand. As a lot of my friends in the audience have said here tonight, this is a transportation system that works where the broken Access-a-Ride system did not work. It provides us opportunities to respond to spontaneous events and get there in an on-time fashion. Allows me to get to and from work every day when I work for a company where I don't always have predictable working hours. Sometimes you might have to stay a little bit past 5 o'clock if there's work that still needs to get done. And to that point, just want to encourage the RTD board to really spend the necessary time to look at the data behind this service before rushing to any decisions. I think the RTD staff owes it to the board to provide good quality data. And, for some of the things that we, are interested in is what are some of the costs associated with the regular Access-a-Ride services that are eliminated because people are using Access on Demand, and really continuing to be innovative and decrease some of those administrative costs. In the software world that we live in, running a service based on Uber shouldn't cost 25% administrative costs. And of that, I think there's other areas to save costs in ways that won't affect the service negatively, and will still have it be a useful service for the RTD constituents. Appreciate all your time tonight.
Thank you very much for your comments and for joining us. Our next speaker is Nate Trilly.
Hello, my name is Nate Trela. I've been here a few times over the last several months talking about paratransit and access on demand. Obviously, with such a broad selection of possible changes to the program being looked at, cautious, thorough consideration of everything I think is very important. And I do think that even though the peer review was silent on the matter, the possibility of restoring multi-stop trips should be part of the decisions being made in this process. I've talked before about how this has provided freedom of movement that people with disabilities do not usually have. It has, made possible for me a day to get some work done, go for a radiation appointment, pick up my kid or my youngest, bring her home, take her to school, whatever I needed to get done in the day. Things that weren't possible with the broken core access-a-ride service, things that are not financially feasible with Uber having to pay full fares to shuttle around the metro area like that, and logistically impossible to do with the fixed route service. The way that program, or that opportunity, that availability, that feature was shut off pretty quickly and without any explanation of data, supporting the possible cost savings is concerning as you're looking at this suite of changes right now. I truly believe that there's an honestly held belief that this was a change that was going to save money and help protect the system long-term. And I believe there's a sincerely held belief by staff that some of the cuts being reviewed at this point in time could potentially save money for the system. But there's no data being presented at this point in time. I hope it's coming. I think you and the board deserve to have that data, and I think the staff should be doing should recognize the importance of bringing that forward. With the multi-stop issue, the financial savings have never been really demonstrated to be there at this point in time. There is, this is a rare choice that possibly added cost to your consumers and to and to RTD's own expenses, which is not really a win-win for anybody. I know there have been questions raised about equity claims that could arise from this, but beyond vague references to the ADA and Title VI, there really has been no clear explanation in all these months of what those concerns could be, what specifically in the statutes, in the rules could be coming into play here. I think that's a level of transparency that needs to be available on discussing multi-stop trips, as well as any of the other changes that are being considered here. This is such significant changes that are possibly out there right now. This is not something we should be rushing through. Thank you for the time.
Thank you very much for the comments and for joining us. Our next speaker is Timothy Keenan.
Hi, everybody. My name is Timothy Keenan. I'm totally blind, and I've used both the Access-a-Ride and Access on Demand services, and they each have their good points, but by this point, it's most of my day, since I work a freelance job. So, like for instance, today, if I had tried to register Access-a-Ride to come down here, I would have missed out on a fairly important thing that came up with my work. And Access on Demand has allowed me to live an active life, that's not pre-scheduled, because a lot of our lives these days are not. And so I just wanted to, Access on Demand is considered a premium service, and I just don't think that's quite the right terminology these days. It's pretty necessary for us to live the lives we want in 2024 and beyond. So beyond just emphasizing the importance of the Access on Demand and the fact that it really is necessary for a lot of people, I just wanted to, you've heard it before, but when I saw this timeline that was proposed by staff, I was like, whoa. You guys are going to get deluged over the next couple months with stakeholder input and the initial recommendation and then the final recommendation. And then you're going to be asked to vote on that in November. And I just think, just wanted to urge you to take your time. If you don't feel like you're being given all you need, all the data that should go behind changes of this magnitude to access on demand service, don't be afraid to say, let's table this for another month and until we get until we can be comfortable about doing this. But thanks for all you do, and I appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments and for joining us. Our next in-person speaker is Keith Brooks.
Good evening, I'm Keith Brooks. Maintenance of way is a hard, often thankless job that often involves the worst elements of late-night warehouse work and heavy construction. And in RTD, it's especially hard. There's having to do 20 years of regular maintenance in, well, hopefully as soon as possible. I came to speak about two things. One, what has been going on, which is good. I know I've been coming to these for months with bad news, but a recent interview in Railway Track and Structure with several head people at RTD Maintenance of Way really impressed me with what they've done with the resources they have. Only 22 people out at night doing the work, backed up by a total of 75. And while I certainly feel the work should be done faster, it should be done faster through more people. But the people that are here right now doing the work are truly impressive. I also wanted to talk about projects being finished early. The coping panel project was finished early. Congratulations. No notes. There's nothing after that. Congratulations. Downtown light rail, however, that was finished 3 weeks early. If it was going to finish 3 weeks early, it would be clear it was going to finish early several weeks before that. Now, in the end, in the current world we live in right now, the opportunity has been taken to use that time to get some more work done. That is good. That is a very good use of available resources. What's not so good is before we heard about that, the first thing we hear is a statement that the reason trains can't start running again until 3 weeks later, despite the project being finished, was because of the unionized light rail operators. That is an excuse we have heard a lot. It is an excuse that every time you go to someone at the union, they're like, oh, we'd love to do that. We'd love to run extra service during a sporting event. We'd love to get the trains running soon. That excuse runs very thin, especially when there is actually a good reason. Using that time to get more work done to make next summer less painful is good. Just please stop pulling a defeat from the jaws of victory. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments and for being here. Our next speaker in person is Genoese Holcomb.
To get to the podium and you have to come.
Is it here?
It's right here.
Okay. Hi, Genoese Holcomb, and I'm back to talk about paratransit. First, I want to thank you very much for offering access on demand. It's been life-changing. It's allowed me to be less afraid to go out, not just for the sake of mobility, but just for the sake of money. I live on a fixed income, and I don't have enough money to take multiple trips on Uber every month. I do have some money, and all of my pennies of limited disposable income were going to transportation. I do take paratransit, and I did take Access-a-Cab. I thought the reason you created Access on Demand was because you were aware that paratransit was failing. It doesn't show up in the pickup window. It doesn't drop you off. Sometimes I was dropped off 2 hours early, which is embarrassing and also stressful. I've stood outside of my apartment for 45 minutes pacing because there's nowhere to sit. And sometimes, paratransit just says, well, just wait, your bus is coming. Sometimes the worst part is they'll say, it's canceled. This has happened to me. Do they make good on it and bring someone else? No, they just say, well, you're just gonna have to cancel your appointment or figure it out. Without access on demand, I had to pay out of pocket to then call an Uber, or else, I have to cancel my appointment because I'm gonna be too late. These are very stressful and not reliable situations. And I think that's the main thing that access on demand gives me, is the ability to be somewhere on time without wasting a couple hours, in this limbo land. And that is something we all deserve. And I think that you guys really need to think about the fact that paratransit is not meeting its statutory requirements. And now that you have shown that access on demand works, we know it works. We know it's possible. It also costs about a fifth less, it seems like, from what the CTAA says about what it costs you to provide a bus. And so I would really like to see data. I'd also really like to know, do you know who your consumers are? Do you know what it means to have an impairment mobility problem? Like, I can walk, obviously, but I have orientation issues. I have stress problems, but I had to qualify for Access-a-Ride. It's a humiliating process. You have to show someone how you walk so terribly. I already know I don't do the greatest job walking in new places, but to constantly, every 4 years, have to prove it yet again. My doctor was humiliated asking me some of the questions on the form. So people signing up for this service, it's a big deal, and you don't do it lightly. And in the last meeting, there was kind of the insinuation that the numbers doubled because people just want this free service. That's not why. It's because for the first time, it was actually worth the humiliation to some people to sign up for paratransit in order to get a service that worked. And so I thank you very much, and I just want to remind you that it is Colorado for all. Paratransit is not for all, but for the people that need it, it is imperative, and it is the crucialness to our ability to be part of society and to live full lives. And I thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your comments and for joining us. Our next and final signed up speaker in person is Richard Bamber.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Richard Bamber, Greater Denver Transit. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. Tomorrow, I'm going to take the light rail, so I have got the light rail survival kit as advised by certain directors and staff. I have a book, I have my device for my podcasts, and just in case I have a problem with my undies, I have some spare 4-pack. That's because one for each line that has slow zones on it. The thing I really need is this document here, which is the schedule to stop belonging in the fiction section of the bookstore, okay? In January, before all this started, light rail trains were given 54 minutes to go from Union Station to Ridgegate Parkway. This summer, taking into account the coping panels project, that was extended by 7 minutes to 61 minutes, okay? Next week, in the service change, we go back to the 54-minute runtime. That's what the new schedule is saying. The problem is the trains are still taking huge delays to get down due to the slow zones. I followed one train today online, 12 minutes late at its destination. One of our members took a train down to Arapahoe at the Village last week, on-time departure, 16 minutes late as far as Arapahoe. Riders can take late trains. Riders can take the reduced frequency. We can't take both. You've probably got in your feedback today some excellent work by Joe Mayer. As part of Joe's research, she got some emails from RTD staff, and it was very clear that the light rail planners know exactly what's going on. They know that the trains are taking longer to get end to end, longer to lay over, longer to get back, what we call the cycle. Because of that, they know we need extra trains to do the same level of service. Now, while we have plenty of light rail trains, we don't have plenty of extra operators. Therefore, we have the unfortunate decision where the E line is not, and the H line are not going back to 15-minute service. They can only go back to 30. Okay? Next week, how is this going to work? You know, there's another 7 minutes being put wrong way in the schedule. The trains are going to continue to be late. RTD's had its big schedule change. People are still going to have a negative view of RTD. The curious thing is the operators have voted on a run board that allows these extra times. So why not publish a schedule that shows how long the trains are going to take? As the slow zones get fixed and as Maintenance Away continue to pull heroics, the times will get shorter, but all that will happen to the operators is they will just have more layover at the ends of the line. They continue to do the same runs, they continue to pick up the trains, start and finish exactly as they voted. I think with everybody else but the rider taken care of, we really, really need to think how we adjust this. There is a 30th anniversary party coming up to celebrate light rail. We would love it if the riders were truly considered. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for joining us and for your comments. We have another speaker who did sign up, and that is Chris Nicholson.
Thank you, directors. I just want to say very quickly that I appreciate and agree with a lot of the comments that have been made so far. Access Ride's a critical service, and for folks who can't get around without driving their own vehicle and who run into serious mobility challenges, I think we need to take their lived experience into serious account when we're making changes. But I completely understand that, you know, RTD doesn't have all the money in the world. There's a great chart in this month's packet that shows the changes in fare revenue by source. We saw a significant increase in mobile fare payments, the use of the validators, and at the same time, completely flat cash payment. There was virtually no decline in cash payment. People are not finding the new system that we have as a good alternative for paying in cash. So I bet you know what I'm going to talk about. Credit card tap is rolling out nationally. And you guys bought the hardware already. We've all been using it for over a year now. It works. So why can't you take the final step? There's an RFP this month for level boarding for the trains. That's extraordinarily expensive, and it will take years to implement. Tap to pay is something that's doable in the next year or two. But as far as I'm aware, there's no RFP for that. Cash payment takes time, it's more complicated, and people are forced to overpay if they don't have exactly $2.75. Tap is easy for everyone to understand. RTD's #1 priority right now is increasing ridership. Technologies that facilitate new ridership should be at the top of the priority list, especially when you've already done virtually all the hard work installing account-based ticketing and contactless hardware. Put contactless on the agenda for next month. Find out where we're at and what you can do to make it happen. This one should not wait. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments and for joining us. That concludes those who had signed up to speak in person. Before moving online, I'd just now like to ask, is there anyone else who has attended in person who did not have a chance to sign up who would like to speak? If so, please approach the podium. You may line up, and we will recognize you for 3 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Kroll, for the assistance.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us.
My name is Christine Mingus, and I'm the mother of 4 children, and I work full-time. And I just want to say that I really appreciate the Access on Demand, because when my kids were little, I did not have it, and I was very socially isolated, and it also impacted my children because I couldn't really get them out. It was very difficult. I would take them to places we could walk to, but if you've ever considered carrying 2 toddlers and a baby and trying to keep track of the other one, those events were very stressful. And so I would have loved to have something like what we have now. I had applied when I was pregnant with my fourth child for the Access-a-Ride, and I was denied. And I would like to address the fact that I do not think that the qualifying process is equal or fair. And I think that there should be a lot of thought given to that. There are some people on there that practically can see enough to drive and don't have other mobility issues. And there were people like me that were totally blind and having orientation issues that struggle to get on it. So I think that's something that needs to be addressed. I am denied often to get onto the Access-a-Ride because there's a note somewhere in the system that says only if it's gonna rain or snow. And so this forces me to use the Access on Demand along with the inconsistencies in the routing of the Access-a-Ride. The routes are way too long. There's more efficient ways to do it. As Uber has proven, there's no reason to go from Thornton to Littleton to get somebody to Lakewood. There's better ways to do this. So I just want to say that I appreciate the Access on Demand. I am in agreement that we should definitely do a base payment. I have no problem with that. And I just hope that you guys will consider the data for all these rides. I do think it is less expensive to pay a $25 fee than it is to hire the bus drivers at their level of pay, and then to the specialized equipment that is necessary for maybe a wheelchair user that isn't necessary for a blind user. And so I think that we need the data to be considered before any changes are made. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments and for joining us. Seeing no other speakers in person, we will now move to our online speakers. Prior to that, I'll note for the sake of the record that we were joined by Treasurer Bouquet as of 2:11, I'm sorry, I believe that was 6:11 p.m. All right, we will now move to our speakers online. Again, you may unmute yourself on Zoom when you are recognized, or you can toggle *6 if dialed by phone. Board Office Executive Manager, Mr. Kroll, can you please assist me in calling on our online speakers, please, by please calling on the first?
Yes, the first online speaker, your phone number ends in 0220.
Hello, thank you very much. Can you just confirm that you can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect, thank you. This is Dr. Claudia Polska, and I'm calling to talk about paratransit, the Access on Demand, and the peer review study. And while I appreciate the effort and thoughtfulness that went into actually conducting a peer review, I think that was a really great step forward. I will say I was kind of disappointed in the fact that, you know, APTA has an arm of a group for people with disabilities, so transportation for folks with disabilities. And I was wondering why they weren't part of this process. It would make sense that, as we know, and you heard tonight from subject matter experts, the people who actually use it. And remember, in marketing and business school, customer is always right. Think about it. Coca-Cola, Procter & Gamble would die for these increases in numbers. What can you do creatively to monetize this opportunity where you're not putting people who are the user, the customer, in harm's way for any financial impact? So, for example, can you use the data in some fashion? Can you find a way to work with Uber and Lyft to fill in those areas? I also know from staff, at least that's what they told me a couple of years ago, the paratransit group, that when you use paratransit, each way is costing RTD $80 each way. And so right now, if you're using, let's just say $25 each way, that's $50. So RTD is saving $110 right there. But then ask yourself about the data that really is missing. And this is a really great point here, guys. Everyone's talking about data, data, data. And data should be driving the decisions here and informing you. But do you have all the data? I don't think so. Like, ask yourself, for example, who are these people and where are they going? Well, I'll tell you. You heard it yourself. They're going to work. They're going shopping. They're going to entertainment, and they're spending money. And that's sales tax revenue that goes to RTD. And I think it would be real swell if Mr. McLeod could look into that and say, hey, where are these sales tax dollars going? Can we track that? I bet you can. I also am concerned about the lack of input through the peer review of a broader stakeholder group. Out of all the hours that were spent, 55 minutes were given to people with disabilities, 30 for Julie Riskin at the CCBC, and 25 from a representative at the Deaf Blind Council. And the Laren Hall never showed up. And that's a concern. And the horse is kind of out of the gate. Folks with disabilities, your consumers
Director
should be
Folska,
part
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Yeah, you are over the 3 minutes. If you would mind just briefly wrapping.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I think it would be great to conduct another peer review using people with disabilities, both from APTA, CTAA, and TAC, and the broader community throughout the entire process. Thank you very much, and I appreciate all that you do.
Thank you very much, Director, for joining us. Mr. Kroll, if you could call our next speaker, and when our next speaker is called, if they could please begin, please.
Yes, next we have James Triplett.
Good.
We'll need Mr. Triplett off.
Folder, Zoom webinar, more options for captions, button menu, space, context menu, my speaking language, English, submenu.
Can you hear me?
Now unmuted. Hand now lowered.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can now hear you.
Okay, I'm Joe Triplett. I am a self-advocate. I am an Access-a-Ride user, and where I do agree with access on demand, also, but you know, I'm speaking for the unspoken on Access-a-Ride who, for one reason, can't speak themselves. I wish I could use access on demand, but I have severe mobility issues that prevent me from doing that. Another reason I can't use access on demand is because, unlike Access-a-Ride, they're not required to help you. And I've spoken to people who've told me when they get out of the car, some of them are blind and some of them have other disabilities, that they said, we have to find our own way to our destination. Access-a-Ride and other companies of people with disabilities, they will assist you if you need help to get from the bus or the car to the destination. I would like, and I want to say about Access-a-Ride, there's been a lot of criticism of Access-a-Ride, but you know what? A lot of people on this line have other options. There's those of us who we don't have an option. If Access-a-Ride was to go away, we would be basically prisoners in our own homes. And
The host has stopped broadcasting
I would
the
like
webinar
to
on custom
see
live streaming service.
some updates on Access-a-Ride. I've been on the system since 2004. I have not seen one, and I'm talking major update. And I've been riding 20 years. I wish that that the peer review board would please put some new things in Access-a-Ride. For example, if I go to 3 places in one day, it takes me 8 hours just to go to 3 places, where people on access demand can go in a third of that time. I don't begrudge them of that, but I really wish that we would have more updates. And by the way, it's not the passenger's fault or RTD's fault if they can't get enough drivers. You know, we're really low on drivers for the Access-a-Ride. Well, I know the staff on Access-a-Ride, and they're trying to hire as many drivers. A lot of them will stay, get that $1,000 bonus, and then leave. You know, so of all the criticism for Access-a-Ride, yeah, there's problems with that. I think there's problems with the Access on Demand. So I wish that we would get some major updates, you know, on Access-a-Ride. Maybe we could ride, you know, like most people on Access on Demand, they ride free. Okay, I don't begrudge that. I wish I could. It would sure save me a lot of money in my budget. But I'd like to see some changes made, like that we don't have to wait an hour. If I want to go to the bank for a 5-minute run, I'd like to be able to get back on the bus, or at least wait no longer than 15 minutes to go to my next destination. You have to wait an hour between all three places. Well, and you count the time you wait for the Access-a-Ride to pick you up and bring you home. That could be everywhere up to $8. So I wish that this peer review would you know, ask for some major changes that would make it more helpful to, you know, to the Access-a-Ride users. There's many of us.
James, I apologize to interrupt. You are over the 3 minutes. If you could briefly wrap, please.
Okay. If we didn't have Access-a-Ride, many of us would be prisoners in our home. I know RTD's doing their best, but please, for the first time in 20 years, please give some major updates and help us also to be able to travel with independence. Thank you for your time, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your comments and for joining us. Mr. Kroll, could you please call on our next speaker, and they will be recognized.
Yes, next we have Jordan Castor.
Hello there. My name is Jordan Castor, and I'm a totally blind resident of Boulder. I'm here tonight to express my deep concerns about the proposed restructuring of the Access on Demand program, specifically the recommendations to limit the service to within 3/4 of a mile of fixed routes. The fixed route system in Boulder is already challenging for blind and disabled users. Many bus stops are placed at entrances to large parking lots, forcing me to navigate through open and unsafe places to reach my destination. In addition, many areas lack accessible pedestrian signals, which are essential for me to safely cross the large, complex intersections common to many areas of Boulder. Because of these issues, relying on the fixed route system is not a viable option for me or many others with disabilities. Access on Demand has been that solution that allows me to travel safely and directly to my destination without having to navigate these unpredictable environments. I use Access on Demand every day to get to and from work. Now, in the past, there was a bus stop next to my office, but that route was eliminated. Now, the closest fixed route stop is 1.5 miles away from my workplace, a distance that's simply too far for me to navigate. Many disabled residents, including myself, choose to live and work based on the availability of transit. So we choose where to live and work based on that. Some homeowners have bought their houses with fixed routes in place to find out years down the line that fixed route system has been eliminated from their neighborhoods, making Access on Demand or Access-a-Ride their only transportation option. Reducing the service area of Access on Demand would not only take away the freedom this program provides, but also the confidence of knowing that we can get to our destinations reliably. The fixed route system often leaves uncertainty about whether a bus even serves a particular location or how far the stop is from where we need to go. Access on Demand removes that uncertainty by ensuring direct and reliable transportation. I strongly urge the board to consider other ways to ensure the sustainability of this program without cutting off the access for those who rely on it most. As it was said earlier, Access on Demand is not a luxury for us. It is a necessity for people who, like me, depend on it daily to live and work independently and participate actively in our communities. Thank you so much for your time and for considering the critical role that Access on Demand plays in the lives of disabled residents.
Thank you very much for your comments and for joining us. Mr. Kroll, if you could please call on the next speaker online and they will be recognized.
Yes, next we have Marianne Migliorelli.
Thank you so much. My name is Marianne Migliorelli. I live in Boulder and am the president of the National Federation of the Blind Boulder Valley chapter. As a resident here in Boulder, I did not choose to use the Access-a-Ride system as I am totally blind and for most things was able to travel independently. I did not choose to use Access-a-Ride at a time when I knew that drivers were short. Many friends who need the service, who have more severe mobility independent issues of any kind, were being told that there were not enough drivers to service their needs. Why would I have accepted an Access-a-Ride at the time when my friends were being denied their own services? When Access on Demand became available, I certainly was more willing to consider the fact that, yes, there are times when I do need to use a service that I know will not take away from someone else's service that needs the Access-a-Ride. We are looking at all of the examples that people are putting out about how much money this program is taking to do what it needs to do for Access on Demand. But we have not had any numbers on how much Access-a-Ride has been depleted or not been being used because of people using Access on Demand. And we also do not know how much the Access-a-Cab program has decreased because people have been able to shift to Access on Demand. When we have, and you have, all of the data, there will be a lot clearer picture of what versions of cuts should be possible in order to sustain all of the programs that are part of the paratransit system. I ask that you do not make decisions until you have all this data in hand, and that when you do, please consider the people whose services you are taking away. Thank you very much for your time and your attention and your diligence in doing the work that you do.
Thank you very much for your comments and for joining us. Mr. Kroll, could you please call the next speaker and they will be recognized.
Yes, next we have Joy Nelson.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I am also an Access-a-Ride on-demand user. When I have used it, and I do use a number of them because I go to and from work. I am now actually able to, if I decided to go to my parents, I'd actually be able to go to my parents because it is there. Aurora does not have bus systems all the way into the outer edges of Aurora, into Murphy Creek or into all that different area. We need to be able to have those options, to be able to have services, to be able to go visit our families, to be able to go shopping. We should be able to, like I said last time while I was in person, that we need to be able to have opportunities to use the multiple stop system because it would save money, it would save us time, and a whole bunch of other things. I am in favor of making sure that there is at least 60 rides a month. I am in favor of it, keeping the $25 up to it. I do have to pay over most of the time. I am paying at least close to $10 over in addition to get to and from work. If I didn't take the regular fixed route system, it would take me over it usually takes me about 3 hours each way, and that's only going 20 miles. I'm like one of the other ones. They have tried telling me that I'm only allowed to use Access-a-Ride if it's snowing or raining. I have tried using Access-a-Ride and have been late to a doctor's appointments multiple times. So there's a whole bunch of issues with using Access-a-Ride. Access-a-Ride on demand has been very helpful. I also due to some major issues that have happened during that. So I would really ask that you guys take in consideration to those who use it. For those of us who do have disabilities, who are blind or whatever else, that we are able to actually live our lives and be able to have that opportunity. Because for one, I get to work, I can't leave at a specific time. I need to be able to have that flexibility in my life. I need to be able to have the flexibility to go where I need to. So thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments and for joining us. Mr. Kroll, could you please call the next speaker and they will be recognized.
Chair Davidson, at this time I see no further speakers.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kroll. Thank you to all of those of you who attended in person and virtually to speak with us here and share your comments with the board. We very much appreciate the participation. Mr. Kroll, could you please at this time read whether any emailed comments were received for today's meeting into the record?
Yes, we received 2 emailed comments, one from Charles Davis regarding access on demand, the other from Greater Denver Transit regarding a host of topics including several action items on your agenda for this evening, Northwest Rail peak service feasibility study, and the light rail speed restrictions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kroll, for reading that into the record. With no other participants in the queue to speak, we will now close the public participation period at this time. We will now move into our external entities reports. I'll just let everybody know we will have 2 external entity reports this evening, and then we will be taking a brief break prior to resuming with our first discussion item. This month, we have 2 external entity reports. Our first report is from the Citizens Advisory Committee, or CAC. Mr. John Fusa, you have joined us this evening. Will you please provide your report?
Thank you, Chair Davidson and members of the RTD board. I'm John Fusa, co-chair of the Citizens Advisory Committee. And I want to thank you for a couple minutes to provide this monthly update. By way of activity, the CAC last met on September 12th of this year, and we had a robust agenda, as we've had for most of the year, robust discussion of some topics that are on our annual work program. The first was a presentation by John Gardocki on the sub-regional service councils and recent applications and grant awards. I want to thank Mr. Gardocki for his presentation and information. And that was a robust conversation. The CAC continues to support the sub-regional service council program and effort. And we continue to urge the RTD board to support that effort as a way to provide innovative and small bore transit service and projects in communities throughout the district. We also had, as part of our September agenda and part of an ongoing conversation, a discussion about the effort commenced by Chair Davidson's call to fill open seats on the CAC. We currently have 6 open seats on the Citizens Advisory Committee. And while we're able to meet, discuss, and conduct business, we would very much like, as a group, to have those seats filled. We appreciate the RTD board support for that recruitment and solicitation effort for new CAC members. And Chair Davidson, we thank you for calling that effort. Pleased to report, thanks to the efforts of the board and RTD staff, that the webpage with information and the application for CAC membership is now live on the RTD website, and it will be active through the October 25th CAC member recruitment deadline. And we are, as a group and individually, working to push that information and opportunity out into our communities within the district in hopes of getting good interest for new members to volunteer to serve on the CAC. And we very much appreciate the board's support for that effort and for the CAC in general. We also had a brief discussion of the November election issues, which I won't say anything more about here, but the CAC continues to be very supportive of certain ballot questions on the November election. We had a robust discussion amongst the CAC in follow-up to Deputy Chief Horn's July presentation on public safety programs and efforts in the system. And we look forward to inviting the Deputy Chief and Police Department representatives back to future CAC meetings. System safety is one of the CAC's kind of core concerns and issues as it goes to the rider experience and the ability of the system and RTD to both attract and build ridership going into the future. And we appreciate Deputy Chief Horn's time that he spent with us in July. We also had a discussion, which I led, about the CAC work program for 2024. With the support of the board and RTD staff, we have a very robust work program for the CAC this year. And I'm pleased to report that on almost every item on the work program, we've either made progress or completed our task for the year. So I do want to report out about good progress. We will repeat that effort of updating our work program next year and hope to make similarly good progress with the support of the board and the staff. Lastly, upcoming for the October meeting, we will continue our effort as a group and individually to promote volunteer opportunities for the CAC, and we hope to report out on that further at our next update to the board. In October, we will also be having a presentation from staff on the paratransit peer review, and we hope to have a robust discussion of that topic and provide useful, meaningful input to the board on that issue, which is of great concern as we've seen this evening. And then lastly, in October, we'll have a staff presentation on several of the regional and in-district bus rapid transit projects and initiatives, some of which are going very much going to construction, like the Colfax BRT. We're particularly interested in that topic and hope to provide the board with comments and input on those BRT projects that are still early and in the planning stages. For example, the Federal and Colorado Boulevard BRT efforts, and we applaud RTD for its participation and support of the Colfax BRT project, as well as other ones like State Highway 119 in the northwest corner of the district. And with that, Mr. Chair and board, I conclude my update and thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Fusa, and thank you for joining us for your report and for all of the work on the 2024 work program and highlighting the opportunity to define the 2025 program and also searching for those new members. Thank you very much for your work and for joining us. We have a second report this evening, and is from the Access-a-Ride Paratransit Advisory Committee, or APAC. Ms. Julie Jennings has joined us. Welcome. Please present your report.
Good evening. This is Julie Jennings with the Access-a-Ride Paratransit Committee meeting summary for September 10th, 2024. Public comment was received from non-APAC member Nate Trula with the Blind Parents Division of the National Federation for the Blind in Colorado. He expressed concern for the NFB was not contacted for the peer review. The NFB wants the current services maintained at the current status at the current service level and to ensure financial sustainability. Also, that multi-stop should be reinstated. As a note, the NFB has been an ex officio member of APAC for over a year. Staff will reach out to the NFB again to see if they can identify a member to begin attending APAC meetings. The APAC New Year Looking back, Gretchen Vittergar summarized the status of paratransit for the last year. In addition, she noted that APAC has been helpful in providing feedback, support, and testing of QRide, has given input that led to revisions in the customer guide. An APAC's recommendation for a feedback mechanism was taken up by RTD's customer care, with hopes to have one implemented in the new year. Going forward, we have 2 new members, Sarah Lee and Thomas Rossi, were introduced. Excuse me. APAC is expected to continue to test and provide feedback feedback on the excuse me. Is expected to continue to test and provide feedback on the new web portal and its launch. Input will be provided on the peer review and proposed changes based on its review and customer engagement. Updates on the feedback mechanism. The feedback mechanism is being developed by RTD IT and customer care departments for all RTD. A suggestion was made to also have an after-trip feedback mechanism. Discussion, peer review of paratransit services, Access-a-Ride and Access on Demand. Fred Worthen, Assistant General Manager, Bus Operations, provided information on the peer review process, the peer review report, and the recommendations. He confirmed that the multi-stop Access on Demand option will not be allowed at this time. RTD must provide equal access to services as required by Title VI and ADA laws. Multiple concerns and suggestions were discussed. Details can be found in the complete minutes of our APAC meeting, which can be made available. Possible future agenda items include discussion of the driver's 6-minute wait for the customer, dispatcher's willingness and ability to provide vehicle status prior to the end of the pickup window, Uber Wave program, driver training, providers how to use, and lack of vehicle availability. And that concludes my summary. Thank you.
Ms. Jennings, thank you very much for the continued work at APAC, and thank you very much for joining us and sharing your report this evening. That concludes the external entities portion of the agenda. We do have next on our agenda slightly different order. We will move to a discussion item section, and this is for the paratransit peer review final report and next steps that will be presented. Prior to moving to that discussion item, we are going to take a 10-minute break. So we will start that now, and we will reconvene as of 7:05 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. Thank you. Thank you very much. We are reconvened as of 7:06 p.m. Mountain Daylight Time. This is Chair Eric Davidson speaking for the sake of the record. We just took a brief break. We're now moving to a discussion item this evening. This will be the paratransit peer review final report and next steps. At this point, I'd like to call upon and recognize General Manager and CEO Deborah A. Johnson to please introduce this item to the board.
Thank you very kindly, Mr. Chair. Good evening to all that are assembled. As introduced, I'm Deborah Johnson. I serve as the General Manager and Chief Executive Officer. This evening, I am joined by my very capable staff, being Fred Worthen, Assistant General Manager of Bus Operations, Stuart Summers, Chief Communications and Engagement Officer, and John McKay, Executive Business Partner. And collectively, there will be a presentation pursuant to the Paratransit Peer Review Final Report. By way of background, this peer review was convened at my request of the American Public Transportation Association, which is the North American industry-based association focused on public transit service delivery. And in the event of our desire to garner a better understanding about services related to both the American with Disabilities Act of 1990, complimentary paratransit services, and premium supplemental services. We enlisted the help of subject matter experts that work at transit agencies across the country to delve in. So with that as a backdrop, I will yield the floor to Mr. Worthen to start off the presentation, and then he will yield the floor to our colleagues to round out the presentation this evening. Thank you very kindly.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. Having technical difficulties. Good evening, honorable board members. I am Fred Worthen, Assistant General Manager of Bus Operations. As Ms. Johnson said, I'm joined tonight by Stuart Summers, Chief Communications and Engagement Officer, and John McKay, Executive Business Partner. I'll provide an overview of our paratransit programs, some key performance indicators and metrics with regard to these same programs, and then we will also provide an overview of recent customer service satisfaction survey regarding paratransit operations. And finally, Mr. Summers will conclude with an upcoming outreach and engagement efforts discussion to help improve our paratransit programs as a whole. Being difficult. All right. So RTD's paratransit program is comprised of accessorized service and our supplemental premium paratransit service, commonly referred to as Access on Demand. Our accessorized services are complimentary paratransit services that are conditionally provided to passengers who live within or travel within 3/4 of a mile of RTD's fixed route services or rail stations due to a disability or mobility barrier as defined within the criteria set forth by the Americans with Disabilities Act. These services supplement regular fixed route services. Customers are required to pay a fare associated with their trips taken, and all accessorized vehicles are branded and are 100% accessible. RTD's Access on Demand program is a supplemental premium service that provides curb-to-curb taxi and rideshare options. Access on Demand services are currently available 24/7 throughout the entire service area that is available to current eligible accessorized customers. Access on Demand customers do not pay an initial fare up front like our accessorized customers do. RTD pays the first $25 of the customer's trip. Any cost above the $25 is paid by the customer. Customers can take up to 60 trips per month on any one of 4 different service providers. As a bit of background, the Access on Demand program began as a pilot in 4 zip codes with limited service hours. The initial pilot was expanded in phases with the addition of wheelchair-accessible vehicles, additional zip codes added, and eventually a full expansion to the entire RTD service area with no time or service area restrictions. The Access on Demand program was eventually expanded to include 4 service providers. Late in 2023, RTD staff learned that some customers were utilizing multi-stop services that were outside the Access on Demand program scope and service restrictions. The Uber application allows ambulatory customers to request multiple stops when booking a ride. This option is not available through all service providers or to customers who use mobility devices. The inability to provide multi-stop options to all paratransit customers created disparate treatment among our riders. In December 2023, staff notified all riders that multi-stop usage was never allowable under the Access on Demand program and that paratransit customers could not utilize a service. Unfortunately, RTD cannot require Uber to turn off multi-stop functionality. As a result, staff has to manually monitor service usage to ensure customers comply with program regulations. In February 2024, Deborah Johnson asked that I assume oversight of paratransit operations. I have an extensive background in paratransit and demand responsive services, expanding back nearly 4 decades. When I assumed oversight of paratransit operations, CEO General Manager Deborah Johnson commissioned a peer review through the American Public Transportation Association to examine RTD accessorized and Access on Demand programs. As a bit of background, when a peer review is requested, APTA will compile a panel of subject matter experts to assess specific aspects of an agency's operations. This assessment typically consists of a panel interviewing subject matter experts, examining program data and information, and interviewing key stakeholders. Panel expert volunteers their time and effort to help improve operations among other transit systems. The Access-a-Ride and Access on Demand peer review commenced in April 2024. As part of the preliminary process, APTA panel experts met with staff to prepare for the peer review. This included reviewing work to be completed as part of the peer review, determining interview and work schedules, and working through other logistics such as travel, lodging, and workspace. In May 2024, the peer panel conducted on-site interviews, collected data, and worked extensively to analyze paratransit operations for a full week. The peer review focused on identifying best practices employed by similar transit agencies, including demand response programs, examining program parameters that included responsible cost controls, sound customer-facing processes, and reviewing software, hardware, and other tools to ensure optimal service performance and program cost effectiveness. Although the final report is very detailed, all the recommendations center around three major themes. First, there's a need to develop a clearly stated vision for paratransit to guide priorities for the Access-a-Ride and Access on Demand services. Currently, the Access-a-Ride and Access on Demand programs function pretty much as standalone programs instead of complementary programs to support each other as initially designed. Second, there is a need to refresh the Access on Demand program structure to create a fiscally sustainable option that serves customer needs. When the Access on Demand program was first initiated, the monthly cost of operations was roughly $75,000. The program has grown to over $1 million in monthly expenses. In 2022, the average cost per trip was roughly $10. The average cost per trip has grown to approximately $16.50 per trip. Currently, 1/3 of Access on Demand service users consume about 70% of Access on Demand services. Growth within the Access on Demand program is not operationally or fiscally sustainable. Third, there is a need to leverage technology and process improvements to streamline daily work. From May through August, the peer panel worked to develop a final report that included observation and recommendations to consider that could improve Access-a-Ride and Access on Demand services. The full report is available online at the website shown on the screen. Currently, about half of all active paratransit service customers use Access-a-Ride only. About 15% of active paratransit customers use a combination of Access-a-Ride and Access on Demand services. However, about 35% only utilize Access on Demand services. In this case, an active user is a customer who has used either service in the past 6 months. As mentioned during the Operations Safety and Security meeting earlier this month, Access on Demand was intended to supplement Access-a-Ride services, taking some of the pressure off the Access-a-Ride services itself. It was never intended to create a new service market. However, the Access on Demand program does not require an upfront fare, is not restricted to traditional ADA service boundaries or service hours, has a fairly large subsidy per trip, and a fairly large number of trips provided per month. Thus, the program has created a new service market. One of the historical challenges with regard to Access-a-Ride service delivery was on-time performance reliability. Looking back 3 years, Access-a-Ride service delivery floated in the upper 70% range until September 2023. In September 2023, staff integrated freeware with existing scheduling software, which resulted in immediate on-time performance pickup improvements, climbing to 90% on-time service pickups since March of 2024. Going back to Access on Demand services, as previously mentioned, the program structure has resulted in a new market for these services and rapid ridership growth since full inception of the Access on Demand program. During early stages of the Access on Demand pilot program, ridership was roughly 6,000 trips per month. By the time the program was open to the entire RTD service area, It had expanded, with expanded service hours and providers, the program had already more than doubled in ridership trips, with roughly 15,000 trips per month. By August 2024, the program has grown to roughly 63,000 trips per month, roughly 10 times the size of the initial pilot launched in 2021. As the number of trips provided increased, so did the monthly cost associated with providing these trips. Monthly program costs during the initial pilot phase were roughly $85,000. The monthly cost for the program remained fairly stable until trip caps were eliminated during the Zero Fare for Better Air program in September 2022. The Zero Fare for Better Air program drew increased trip usage. The program has grown to over $1 million per month in program cost. Based upon current trip usage trends, it is anticipated that the monthly cost for the Access on Demand program will grow to about $1.2 million per month by year end. The average trip cost has also steadily been rising since program inception as customers leverage the $25 per trip subsidy to take longer trips or to offset peak pricing by service providers. I'm happy to turn the presentation over to John McKay now to discuss our 2024 customer satisfaction survey results for our paratransit services.
Thank you. As introduced, I am John McKay, Executive Business Partner, and since about March of this year, I've been dealing with survey information that we gather on a regular basis from customers and community. And so, got you. Thank you. So, redo that. My name is John McKay, Executive Business Partner, and I'll just be walking through the paratransit customer service data from 2024. So between June 18th and July 19th, RTD engaged with a third-party contractor to conduct surveys for paratransit customers, also for community members this year. So that was between June 18th and July 19th. Just to note that the multi-stop trip function ceased in February of this year. This is an annual survey that's conducted to assess satisfaction, determine customer characteristics, and understand key drivers within the community. The survey went out to 400, well, we hope to get at least 400 completed surveys for this event, and actually had 528 surveys completed, so this is a statistically valid survey so that we know that it's replicable if we were to do this again. Some customer characteristics. The average Access-a-Ride customer is a person, or Access-a-Ride or Access on Demand customer is likely to be a woman over 55 years of age. They identifies 62 to 63% white or Caucasian, 20% Black or African American, and 12 to 13% Hispanic, Spanish, or Latino, Latina, Latinx. 52% reported household incomes of less than $25,000. 62% use Access-a-Ride for most of their trips, 12% use Access on Demand for most trips, and 46% use services for medical appointments. As you can see, and this was the 2023 overall satisfaction with both Access-a-Ride and Access on Demand services, and as you can see, both very satisfied and satisfied customers, that was about 71% of all Access-a-Ride customers in 2023 were in that range from very satisfied to satisfied. About 17% neutral on the service, and 13% total either dissatisfied or very dissatisfied. Moving on to Access on Demand, as you can see, 53% very satisfied, 32% satisfied. So overall, 84% of folks were very satisfied with their Access on Demand service in 2023, and approximately 6% were either dissatisfied or very dissatisfied. Moving on to 2024, we can see that the numbers actually improved for Access-a-Ride. So we went from, let me go back one slide, so 13% overall were either dissatisfied or very dissatisfied with Access-a-Ride service overall in 2023. Moving forward, it's 5%, so that went down a significant amount. It's less than half of the number of people who are either dissatisfied or very dissatisfied with the service, and 80% of people overall are either very satisfied or satisfied. Moving on to Access on Demand, we can see that 52% were very satisfied or satisfied with the service. So that's a significant number. It's 86%, which in the customer realm, that is a fantastic number. That's something that a lot of agencies, a lot of corporations would like to hit. So, and again, year over year, it's about 6% of people who are either satisfied or very dissatisfied or dissatisfied with the service. I'll move back. So it's just moved down 1% in the very dissatisfied range. And here's a better snapshot of this. So from 2023 to 2024, overall satisfaction with Access-a-Ride increased by 9%. And then Access on Demand actually just went up 1%, but that's still a pretty good number for 86% of overall satisfaction. The Net Promoter Score is it's a figure that is used in the commercial markets that determines the number of net promoters, subtracting net detractors to get your overall score. This is not a percentage, it's just a number. And you can see in 2022, the number for Access-a-Ride was 42. In 2023, that went down to 20. And then this year, it went all the way up to 59, which is a fantastic number. In 2023, Access on Demand Net Promoter Score was a 58, and then went all the way up to 67 this year. So these are both good figures. We can see from this that customers are generally very satisfied with the services. And then to look through some of the self-reported top most important things in Access-a-Ride and Access on Demand service. This is for Access-a-Ride. In the customer surveys, we ask customers to rate or to rank rather the importance of some of the factors associated with the service. So at the top, vehicles arriving in the scheduled window is by far and away the most important thing that customers say that they want to see in Access-a-Ride service, followed by fare price, ease of scheduling a trip, travel time, and the ability to get to places they want to go. There are additional factors that are cataloged on the site over there as well, ranging from feeling safely secured in the vehicle all the way down to timely resolutions of my questions, concerns, or complaints. That would be what customers report as their least concern. Moving forward to Access on Demand for 2024, fare price is the most important factor of Access on Demand service, followed by vehicles arriving in the scheduled window. Also, ease of scheduling a trip, the ability to get to places they want to go, and travel time overall. Doing a quick key driver analysis, and just for the sake of the audience, on the y-axis here, satisfaction rating, and this is reported based on survey responses. So the higher on the y-axis, the more satisfied someone is with the service, and then along the x-axis, the importance rating. The farther to the right, the farther it is to the right, the more important it is to the person responding. And just to note, a key driver analysis is a methodology used in commercial markets or consumer markets to identify the key drivers. And looking at RTD's Access-a-Ride key drivers for 2024, we can see there's an elliptical blue blob there on the screen. You can see that on the very far right, A is vehicles arriving within the scheduled window. This is by far and away the most important factor that customers of Access-a-Ride would like to see in using that service. So you can see that's just below the x-axis, so it shows that RTD can improve, and if RTD does put efforts in improving that factor, then customers will be more satisfied over time. And then the other factor is travel time. That's the other one within that elliptical window, that if RTD were to improve travel time, then we could increase customer satisfaction. Moving on to Access on Demand, also fare price and travel time are the same two things. So we know that if RTD were to be able to improve the fare price or the travel time, that would increase customer satisfaction. And with that, I will turn the microphone over to Stuart.
All right, good evening. Introduced, I'm Stuart Summers, Chief Communications and Engagement Officer, and I'm going to take you through some of our outreach and engagement efforts that are currently underway and what we have planned over the next 2 months related to the peer review and feedback from our customers. So first and foremost, we talked about this at the committee meeting earlier this month, but we have a focused paratransit customer survey. So this survey is focused on current eligible customers who have been active in the system, used Access on Demand or Access-a-Ride, any of our paratransit services in the last 6 months. We're putting together a random stratified sample of those customers who use either Access-a-Ride, Access on Demand, or a combination of both of those services. It was important for us that we focus specifically on our customers, individuals that are currently using the system and using these services, so that we can hear directly from our customers who are active and eligible. This will be a trade-off study, so we're assessing what customers are willing to pay for different levels of service that would be provided. The survey is going out this week. We have print copies that will be dropped in the mail later this week, by the end of the week. Also, an online distribution through emails if we have the customer email available to us. This is just one of the surveys we have underway. The second one is a transit agency survey. So this will be a survey that we have sent out to 15 other U.S. transit agencies that provide paratransit services. That was sent out earlier this month. We're gathering information about how these other agencies across the country handle their fares and their services related to paratransit. Survey responses will be collected through early October and then shared with the board in November. Earlier this month, I mentioned some of our online metrics, and I want to just give some updates to those. So on Monday, September 9th, we sent an email to 10,315 of our paratransit eligible customers. This included active and non-active customers. Maybe we'll switch mics. Perfect. Our active and non-active customers in the system. Of that, 4,916 of the customers opened that email, about 53%. They were invited to download the peer review. Of that number, the final report has been downloaded 646 times as of about a week ago. And then also the paratransit peer review webpage, which I'd invite everybody to go check out. There's a lot of frequently asked questions on there. There's information, timelines. That's had about 2,400 views as of about last Wednesday. And then we also sent out a pre-recorded message using our interactive voice response phone system. So for customers that don't have access to email or check their email regularly, we provided this automated message to about 5,000 eligible customers, inviting them to also learn more about the paratransit peer review and to call in and ask if they have follow-up questions. We also put an online feedback form on that webpage. As of September 18th, we've had 175 submissions on that online form. All of the feedback received will be shared with the board of directors and made available to the public as part of the November cycle. So what we would like to encourage is anyone that would like to provide feedback, anyone that has information they'd like to share, things that may be relevant for consideration, please go on to that webpage and use that form to provide that feedback. All feedback will be collected and put into any of our information as we're starting to put together plans for the future. We also are hosting a number of customer and stakeholder meetings. You heard earlier this evening about the Access-a-Ride Paratransit Advisory Committee meeting that was held earlier. Earlier this month, we also presented at the Operations Safety and Security Committee. This evening, we're here at the board meeting. We have also meetings come up with ACPD and the Citizens Advisory Committee next month. And then we have additional meetings planned for other stakeholder groups, both virtual and in-person meeting options. And then just to orient you back to this timeline that we shared at the board meeting, the committee meeting earlier this month, this feedback process will go through October. So we really want to make sure that everybody has a chance to provide this feedback. Things like we heard this evening during the public comment, all this information will be collected. In November, all customer feedback received as part of the surveys, as well as the U.S. Transit Agency survey, and any feedback that's provided online or via email, or any of these meetings that we provide will be collected and shared with the board. And then any policy-related recommendations will be taken to the board for your consideration as part of the November cycle. And then it is anticipated that any decisions that are approved, action that's taken, will be implemented as part of the May 2025 service changes. And with that, we'll be happy to answer any follow-up questions.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Appreciate it. General Manager CEO Johnson, any thing you wanted to wrap up with?
Thank you for the opportunity, but I believe that staff did a great job. I have nothing to add. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. At this time, I'll open up for questions from directors. I'll start with in the room and also watch online here. Director Lewis, please.
Thank you. I had several questions and comments. This paratransit agency survey, are you sending that to agencies that look like us, that have both a base system and an AOD?
We have 15 different agencies that we are surveying that are of various sizes and structure. Some are what we would consider peers themselves. Others are similar transit systems, but they aren't part of what we would consider a peer itself. But there's 15 different agencies, different sizes, different structures.
Well, the size doesn't concern me. I'm just concerned that we're looking at agencies that have the same challenges that we do, having both a base system and on-demand. So
Yes.
I would hope at least half of them have an on-demand system included in their. So are we talking 6, 7?
I couldn't give you the number straight off, but I can get that information for you.
Thank you. I just wanted to comment, I did address, I attended the rodeo, the bus rodeo about 2 weeks ago, and I got a chance to talk to some of our Access-a-Ride drivers, and they were very impressed with the Q-Ride software, which if people don't know, that's helping increase the efficiency of the Access-a-Ride performance, and I'm really excited about that. I just wanted to share that with you and also say that I'm looking forward to some anecdotal evidence from some of our riders to make sure it's just not numbers. I want to hear from them, but I was hearing some really great things about Q-Ride software dealing with the base system. Just to reiterate, we've had a lot of testimony tonight. Just want to reiterate that ACPD, APAC, CAC are other great opportunities for our public to come and do testimony on this subject. Now, 2 tough ones I'm going to share with you, and please don't take offense to it. But, we started off with 6,250 trips when we only did 3 zip codes. And then we jumped to 62,750 trips. I hope I don't have to remind this board what our job is. Our job is to move people. And I heard this expression, new service market. Yahoo! This is what we do, people. We move people. So if we have to move resources to make sure this works, I think that's something that has to be considered as we go into these conversations. I love the idea of a new service market. According to some of the numbers for next year that we're going to hear later, 2% increase in ridership. But yet we see 6,250 to 62,750 rides, and I think it's still growing. So please just keep that in mind as we go through this peer review, not to get upset with these numbers exploding. This is what we do. We move people. The next one is going to be a tough one. I see no nexus between Title VI, the Civil Rights Act, and RTD saying the multi-stop cannot be used because of disparity. The whole system of the AOD is not parity with the original system. Now, the Civil Rights Act, if you read the executive summary, has no mention of ADA or disability in it. In fact, that point has been brought up to me over the years that I've worked with CCDC. And I want to make it perfectly clear, this is way before your time, Deborah, way before anybody's time. But it was told to me when we tried to present that ADA and people in paratransit were part of the Civil Rights Act, we were told, no, you're not. So now all of a sudden we've reversed it, and now we're hearing that Title VI is the reason why we can't put the multi-ride issue on the table. I think the multi-ride issue has to be on the table with the peer review. And I'm not going to get into an argument right now over this, but the Civil Rights Act of 1964 has nothing to do with the operations of paratransit. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Director Lewis. Any other questions from directors? Okay, great. Second Vice Chair Geisinger, please go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for your comments. Thank you for a great presentation and for your comments, Director Lewis. The chart on pages 20 and 21, the charts show monthly trips and total cost for Access on Demand. Do we have, I don't think I saw the same data for Access-a-Ride to see the monthly trips and the total cost. Do we have that data to compare?
We can provide that.
Okay, thank you. Because my understanding was that this is a much less expensive program, and it sounds like it's becoming, is that not changed? I mean, has that changed? That is,
Mr. Worthen?
The cost per trip is cheaper. That is not disputable. The challenge that we have, though, is that we have a program that is growing at a sustainable rate, an unsustainable rate that we can't fiscally maintain. We're trying to restructure the program to make it fiscally sustainable and make sure the program can't go away. This is not an ADA mandated program. It's supplemental. It's important to individuals, and we want to make sure that the program stays in place. At the same time, though, the agency has a limited number of dollars, and we have to make sure that we're fiscally responsible and that we provide the services to the best we can within the finances that we have.
thanks, that's great. Just to make sure I understand, you know, we created it, I think, because it saved us money and was better service for our customers. But now it's not doing that. Is that right?
Ms. Johnson?
If I may, Deborah Johnson, thank you very much, Second Chair Geisinger, for the question. So the point of the matter is, it is providing service. However, the rub is, as we go forward with the exponential growth in the program in and of itself, and with the model in which we're utilizing, whereby fares are covered up to $25 and you can take 60 trips per month, there has been a greater usage of the system. And so when you factor in all those monies versus the cost per access a ride, which is the paratransit services, that's what's unsustainable as we go forward, because we don't know what we don't know, because there's not a framework associated with said program. And since I do have the floor, just to qualify as it relates to the inequities of the system in reference to what Director Lewis said, I hear him loudly and clearly. We operate from the vantage point of providing equity and services. And for the point as it relates to access on demand, it's causing disparate treatment relative to our services when the prime word and what we do is public. Not all the public can utilize access on demand. If somebody needed a WAVE, a wheelchair accessible vehicle, they're not able to utilize it. And so that's where we talk about the transit equity, or when someone makes a public comment that we heard some months ago whereby somebody is utilizing the services to go to a drive-through. When you use fixed route, which is a complimentary ADA services, you wouldn't be able to do that. So that's where the disparate treatment comes into play. So thank you very much for the opportunity to clarify and qualify that.
If I may add on to the explanation too.
Yeah, it's not, but let me be clear, it's not Title VI disparate treatment. We're talking about in relationship to the equitable services that we provide going forward.
Thank you. Mr. Worthen?
Yes, so I do want to talk very briefly about some of the differences in the program too. As CEO Johnson said, we are trying to provide equitable services. 50% of our service users are access-a-ride only. They have to pay a fare up front when they ride our services. However, those who are on access on demand do not. Those who use the access-a-ride are restricted to 3/4 mile corridor boundaries, whereas those who are using access on demand are not. They have to use services within our normal bus fixed route service hours. Those who have access on demand services do not. They have 24/7. So this is a service that is provided that is above and beyond those that other individuals get. So we're, again, as Ms. Johnson is stating, we're trying to provide equity throughout the programs and services that we deliver, as well as the fiscal responsibility that I spoke of earlier.
That's super helpful. Thank you. And the issue, I know in one of the timelines, it said that, for instance, that wheelchairs were, the access on demand started taking wheelchairs. But the issue is that there's some people who can't use the access on demand. Is that right?
That is part of it.
I guess that's the equity issue. Yeah.
That's part of it, but the other issue is that the majority of the access on demand vehicles are not accessible. And Uber, Lyft, and others really have very few to no accessible vehicles. So we supplement the Access on Demand program with our own paratransit vehicles to help provide wheelchair services to those who need access on demand.
Great, thanks. So, I mean, it sounds like, Mr. Worthen, a lot of this goal is to make sure that people are paying the same and looking in the same area, and that's the sort of thing we'll be looking at.
Yes, equity is a component of it, but again, program preservation is a big part of this as well.
Great.
We don't want to see this program go away. We see the value of this. We see what it does provide for individuals. So we're trying to find that balance where we're providing services that meet the majority of our consumers' needs, but again, are equitable and fiscally sustainable and operationally sustainable.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Director. Director Rosenthal, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for this excellent presentation. So we've heard from some in the community that during the peer review process that they did not believe that their voices were heard, particularly in the paratransit community, that there was some voice in the process, but they did not feel that the voice was sufficient during the peer review process, nor that some of them feel that that voice is continuing today. And so what is your feedback on that?
I believe General Manager CEO Johnson.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I want to qualify the intent of an American Public Transportation Association peer review. The notion behind the peer review was for them to provide us with industry recommendations about how we could optimize and ensure efficiencies with the program. Hence, we received that feedback from individuals that are leading very similar programs from across the country. We looked at subject matter experts, one in particular that has worked in a myriad of different states and notably is now leading the largest paratransit program in the United States, which is out of New York City. We also looked at a program in Southern California with the Orange County Transportation Authority and another at Pinellas, which is in St. Petersburg, the greater metropolitan area there. The reason I qualify that is when we went forward, it was for us to be able to ascertain what might be optimal. And what you just heard from my colleagues across from me is that we're utilizing that information to go out to the community to ascertain what it should be. All the other peer reviews that we have conducted in my tenure here basically were formulated in the same way because that is what peer reviews are relative to APTA's guidelines and the framework. So I just wanted to ensure that there was a collective understanding that we weren't shying away from voices. We were trying to create a framework whereby we could go out with intention, as you heard Mr. Summers outline, to garner that feedback. So thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I'll yield the floor to my colleagues.
Thank you. And as Ms. Johnson elaborated on, most of the APTA peer review is an operational review itself, looking at how we do things in particular. As we move forward, though, through public outreach, we have an extensive public outreach, as Mr. Summers stated, where we are going out to different committees, to different organizations to speak to them directly. I heard directly from APAC when I did a presentation earlier this month with regard to what is important to them. We've also provided a number of mechanisms to the public to provide feedback. We have the surveys that we've spoken of. We have the online feedback forum. And of course, we have the public meetings and public hearings. And any recommendations that are brought forth to the board will be subject to the board approval. I want to make it very clear, though, that the recommendations are not fait accompli. They are recommendations. We will take a look at what serves the locality, the customers that we service, and provide recommendations that are as balanced as possible to meet some of the goals that I addressed with Director Geisinger based upon our local circumstances itself. But this is something that is open to the public. There is a public feedback mechanism. We'll be sharing that feedback with the board, and it'll be a very open and transparent process.
Thank you. Director, please.
Thank you. That's General Manager, and thank you. That's very helpful, Fred. So in terms of going forward, so we heard Stewart, that you had sent a number of thousands of emails and, made phone calls and then there is the form online so people can submit feedback and input. How many times are we going to, and we did discuss this somewhat, so for the benefit of the general community who maybe weren't at our operations committee, I did ask along the same lines, what is the second, third, fourth contact we're going to have with folks who may have gotten an email, who may have gotten a phone call and just didn't get to reading it, or maybe it went to their spam, or they just haven't gotten to listen to the voicemail yet, or something like that. So are we going to continue to contact folks who are paratransit users who are in our database? And then also, are we adding to the number of folks who are in our database so that we can continue to expand our reach?
Mr. Summers.
Mr. Chair. Thanks, Director, for that question. So let me also reiterate, because I know we had this conversation at the committee meeting. As new customers come on board, we are adding them into our communication system. And so just last week, I sent another round of emails out to new customers within our paratransit system to ensure that they had this information, since they were additional since the first email went out in early September. We are providing continual ongoing communications. I think we're up to about 4 or 5 different emails. We're also here this evening. We're hoping that all of you will take this out to your constituents and share this information. We heard from a number of our customers here during public comment that they're communicating this with their colleagues and their friends and associates, and that's what we want. We want this to really expand. We're hoping that all of you will help us with that information sharing, but also we will continue to provide phone calls, emails. We provided our call center with a script, so if anyone calls in with questions related to paratransit, they can answer those questions. And then we're encouraging everyone to check out the website, because we're constantly adding additional answers to questions that we hear when people call in, respond to emails, and come to public comments. So we want to make sure that we're trying to be highly communicative during the next 60 days.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Director. Thank you, Mr. Summers. Director Harwick.
I have some data questions. So I'm hoping you all can answer this, but if not, maybe I can get something in the future. But have we been looking at the data that we have for the roughly however many trips there are a month, 69,000 trips? Have we been able to look at those and take that data and then put the parameters that were recommended, where we're saying 3/4 of a mile, can we put that data, put those parameters in there, look at that, and sort of see how many people would be affected by those changes?
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Worthing, please go ahead.
That's a great question, Director Harwick. We do have a staff that is statistical, they're statistical engineers, actually, that are helping us not only to put together the survey, but to also analyze the information, to have a better understanding of what our customers would like to see, as well as the impacts themselves. Being a former planner, I can tell you that there are some very clear curvatures. For example, if you raise fare a certain percentage, you expect to lose a certain percentage of ridership. On the flip side, if you reduce fare or increase frequency, you expect to see a gain in ridership. So our statisticians are going to work with us moving forward to look at the different scenarios and project impacts to both our customers and to our cost itself. So yes, we do, and that is part of the function that we intend to do.
Will we get that access to either an executive summary of what that looks like? Is that possible?
I'm sure that we will be providing information that will be relevant to answering those questions when we come to the board with recommendations. We'll talk about the survey findings. We will talk about impacts. So we will have information available from those analyses.
General Manager and CEO.
Yes, thank you very kindly. Director Harwick, yes, if we're going to present information to the board for its consideration, it will be very analogous to what we did with the fare study equity analysis, what we did through the code of conduct. I'm sorry, I had a brain lapse. So with that, we will ensure that all of that is compiled, and I'll commend Mr. Summers, who's done a yeoman's job in, providing that information and consolidating in such a way where it's easily understandable. So.
Thank you. Director, please.
Can I request, so I imagine that, what I'm hoping is that before the multi-stop was shut off, we would have some data and know when people were doing multi-stop. And then afterward, we've heard of a lot of people from the audience that have had to sort of makeshift multi-stop. And I imagine that the data would also be able to show that. And I wonder if there's a way to make sure that we're kind of taking that into consideration with the data. Like the gentleman that takes his kid to school and then has to call another Lyft or Uber, we'd be able to recognize that within that time frame, that normally would have been a multi-stop. And I'm just curious if we'll be able to get that as part of our data dump.
So first and foremost, the multi-stop issue is something that has to be tracked manually, and it had to be tracked manually. But second, this isn't about ridership numbers or cost. This is about equity and disparate treatment. I will not recommend something that engages the agency in disparate treatment, regardless of numbers, sir. So this isn't a numbers thing. This is an equity issue.
But it's an equity issue for companies, not for people. If they want to use Uber, they can use Uber. Isn't it sort of like a self-select into it?
We pay for those services, sir, and I'd have to defer to our legal about the exposure.
Okay, but I'm just saying, I feel like it's not personal equity, it's company equity. Like we're worried about companies, not people. That's what it feels like. If Uber is the one that allows multi-stops, and we're saying that other companies can't match their technology, then the issue is not with Uber, it's with the other companies not being able to match their technology. And anybody can download the Uber app and use it. So we're saying not equity for people, we're saying equity for business.
So I don't want to go too far into the weeds, sir, but there have been issues through the Justice Department that clearly define a lot of these issues. Happy to share them with you offline.
Okay.
But this is
So if I may, Mr. Chair, can we continue on with the conversation? Because I don't believe that this is appropriate at this juncture to talk about different issues with different entities. So thank you.
I just have one last question, and I'll leave that alone. Do we have a number that we would like that have this budget end up at?
I'm sorry.
Like eventually, like right now, if we're spending $1.2 million a month over the course of next year, that would be $14.4 million roughly. Like, do we know what the eventual budget we sort of feel comfortable with, or is that going to come in the report?
I think that will come in the report itself as we start looking at the impacts on the statistical analysis like we're talking about. We'll modify our projections. As I showed in the graph earlier, we were projecting to be up to $1.2 million per month in program growth. But as we look at these recommendations, we'll modify those projections for cost and ridership accordingly.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Director. Director Lewis, I'm going to go to other directors with their hands up and then come back around for second. Secretary Guzman, please.
Thank you. This is hard work. This is not easy for the board. I stay up with this problem at night. So to my friends who are here listening to us and hearing how government works, I'm sorry it's frustrating, and I get it. But there's a fiscal reality we have to deal with, and an equity and justice issue that we have to deal with as well. It's not easy. We are engaging with you, and that's the promise from our agency to you. So I am looking forward to that information. Thank you for including the information about the breakdown of ethnicity within this report. I find that helpful, at least for my area, so I can conduct business with my constituents in that way. I do have a question about the timeline on which we're moving. If the goal is the May 2025 service change date, is that an arbitrary goal that we have established for this timeline? Is there a necessary purpose for it? I would like to get to a conclusion with this, but clearly we have heard that we should take time to look at it. So that's one question. And the second question is, if we only look at data-based and data-driven decision-making, it does take out the humanity of what we're doing. And if our mission is to connect lives, then we need to take that into consideration. We're dealing with human lives. And so I'm not sure how to proceed at this juncture other than to wait for the reports to come back after the engagement is done. But I am curious as to why we are working on the calendar that we're working on. Was there any reason behind that? Is it just a date to work with?
General Manager CEO Johnson on the timeline.
Yes, so thank you. So it was outlined as it relates to our service changes, because quite naturally, when you look at Access-a-Ride, we look at that through the lens of complementary services within 3/4 of a mile of our fixed route system. So that's why we associated with that date there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Secretary. Director Lewis, thank you.
Yes, I'm going to have to put you guys on the record. So for the record, will the multi-ride option be reviewed during this peer review process, considering we've talked about three things: disparity and equity, proper use of Title VI, and the question that this question was never asked of the pre-peer review questions of people in our community. So I'm putting you guys on the spot. Will the multi-ride option be reviewed during this peer review?
General Manager, CEO Johnson.
Most definitely. We're looking at the program in a holistic fashion, i.e. that's an element of it. Getting back to the question posed with equity, as Mr. Worthen said, none of this is a fait accompli at this juncture. We have to do our due diligence based upon the input that we have received from subject matter experts across the country. But I think the broader issue, to the point that was raised just by Secretary Guzman, you have data sets, but we are focused on moving people. So that's a balancing act, and what we're going to do as staff is our due diligence to provide key data and different elements that we will put forward for this body's consideration, because quite naturally, we have to ensure what we're putting forward is sustainable. And at this juncture, with the inability to have a focused transportation network for all people that we can't sustain, is not being good fiduciaries. So just wanted to qualify that, but it is our intent to get feedback and figure out, because right now, to the point that Director Harwick, I see your point, but still our focus is on moving people, and we're utilizing a third-party entity that is private. So with that, we have that responsibility to ensure that we can move people and do it within a balanced budget as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Geisinger.
Just briefly, I'm glad to hear also that we're looking at the issue of multi-stops. It sounds like it's important to a lot of people who have come in and talked with us. And I'm wondering if it's possible to divide that second half. Maybe we don't pay the second half, but people could do it. And I don't know if that solves their problem or not, but it seems like it might be one thing to look at.
Thank you, Director. Director Tisdale.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I just want to clarify one issue, because I'm not always able to hear everything that is being said. To be clear, the concern regarding disparate treatment and inequity is a concern that the agency, that RTD is imposing on this analysis, not one that is imposed upon us by applicable law. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, yes.
That's what I needed. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Tisdale, Ms. Johnson. Not seeing other hands raised, I did have two questions here. I think they might be linked. Mr. Worthen, you had mentioned when going through slide 12, packet page 18, this is where we were looking at the paratransit customers by service and usage, Access-a-Ride only, as opposed to Access on Demand only, or using both services. You had made a comment about when we created Access on Demand, part of the intent was to relieve some of the stress on the accessoride system. And I'm curious, just in terms of looking back, and apologies if I missed this at any point, but in looking back at how the numbers shaped up, so looking at, for example, our accessoride-only customers at 2,798, did we see any of those trends? In other words, the blue portion of the pie chart, which is 825 that use both services, can we see trends where there was some relief on the accessoride system? Or another comment that was made is that we perhaps have added a new segment of customers to the system. Is that primarily what happened? Is it a little bit of both? And do we have some idea of what the weighting of that is?
It's a little bit of both, and it's very hard for me to be able to tell exactly whether a person would have taken a trip or not if, based upon accessoride. Our access on demand parameters itself. The 15% though, I think is a mix of individuals. Some trips may have been taken that might not have been taken otherwise, whereas other ones are trips that they're using it as an alternative to accessoride. So I think it's somewhere in that 15% range. The number lies somewhere in there, but it's very hard to know exactly what it is without knowing people's intent of a trip itself.
Okay, that's fair. Thank you for the additional context on that. The question that I think might be linked is then looking at packet page 20 or slide 14. That was looking at the monthly trips that we've been referring to, the 62,750, which is then of course linked to the cost. There's a pretty dramatic increase there relative to where the number of customers are. So looking at the trips, versus the customers with the 1,973 access on demand only. I'm assuming in the early phases, we saw growth in not only the trips, but growth in the user base as well. Mm-hmm. And then we saw explosive growth in the trips. How does the, and it's okay if this is follow-up, but how does the growth in users of the system correlate or not correlate to the growth in trips?
It's a mixed bag. The growth in users has gone up, but as I pointed out, also the amount of usage by users has changed. About 30% of our customers that use Access on Demand are consuming about 70% of the service trips that you're seeing there. So you have a small percentage that is using a very large volume of trips themselves. When we really start looking at the average user out of the 60 trips per month, I'd have to go back and look to be exact, but I believe the average user is somewhere around 20 trips per month. And please don't hold me to that. I can give you exact numbers if you'd like. But we do have individuals, though, that do use all 60 trips per month. And I think that you've seen a mix in growth in both the users and in how the trip is being used itself.
Okay, thank you. And just, I guess, a follow-up on that, are we seeing any leveling off of the growth of, not the trips, I know you commented on that, it's a little hard to forecast at this point, but any leveling off of the growth of user base, or has it been steady?
It's been steadily growing.
Okay, thank you for that. And no need to follow up right away with some of those. I think those would just be some data points I'd be interested in when we follow up and are making some policy considerations when we're looking at that. The final thing I'll just comment on is switching gears. Mr. McKay, thank you for presenting again the survey. I think one thing I note on here is we're getting to see the key driver analysis at work in terms of the on-time performance being one of the key drivers and focus areas, the dramatic improvement in 2024 and the resulting improvement on the not just those that are satisfied, but as you noted, the dramatic decrease in dissatisfaction. So thank you for the work on that. Not only, of course, all those involved in paratransit delivery and improving that with the QRide software, but also for the analysis itself and considering those key drivers when we determine what our priorities are. So thank you for that across the whole organization, not just here. With that, thank you very much for the presentations, very helpful. We look forward to seeing more data and information linked to that. We look forward to seeing the results. Mr. Summers, thank you for all of the outreach that's being done. Thank you for bringing an eye towards data on that as well in terms of who we have engaged with. We look forward to deeper analysis on this and policy considerations at a later date. Thank you. All right. At this time, we are going to switch gears. I'll give a moment here. We're going to move to our committee reports. As a reminder, we were a little out of order here tonight. We wanted to make sure to get that discussion item, which was an important and meaty item, handled earlier in the agenda. We'll start with the audit committee. I do not believe at this time Director Deschel is present. Unless, I'll just offer that the audit committee will be having a meeting that is moving, I believe, into November. So please look forward to some forthcoming information there. I can share that not only will we be reviewing some of the results of the most recent internal audits, but also the plan is to add a discussion item to do a look back and look at what how the audit committee has been performing, how the internal audit function has been performing, look at opportunities to further improve that work. As we all know, that was a big change that we made several years ago, and so it's incumbent upon us to take a step back. I'm very delighted that we've had an internal audit function operating, but now we need to take a step back and look at it and see if it's serving the purposes that we'd like it to. So look for the results of some internal audits in that discussion item. Next, we'll move to the Finance and Planning Committee report. Committee Chair Tisdale, do you have anything you would like to report?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to defer to the Finance and Planning Committee Vice Chair Guzman, who chaired the meeting that we had last week.
Thank you. That's right. Committee Vice Chair Guzman, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The Finance and Planning Committee met on September 10th. Thank you for the opportunity to lead that meeting. We had to stay on track. That was my goal, to try and finish in a timely manner to get to a big event that happened. So we moved through to unanimous consent 2 items, the 29th and Walton property disposition request to extend the timeline, and we also moved forward the 5-year the 5-year financial forecast from 2025 to 2029. We'll see those later. Robust conversation, but we stayed on regarding that. There was a discussion item regarding the 2025 investment policy. And just a note that the next meeting of the Finance and Planning Committee will be October 8th of 2024. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, I'll go to the Operations, Safety, and Security Committee. Committee Chair Whitmore, do you have anything you would like to report?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We met on 9/11/24, and 2 items are on the unanimous consent agenda that we pass unanimously: the near-term Downtown Rail Reconstruction Legal Services Contract, and also the budget transfer for wheel truing replacement of that equipment. We also had 2 very good discussions. Public Transportation Agency Safety Plan was presented by Sky Mott. I believe that it was his first report to us in that role. That report, better known as PTAS, is very important. So we did go over the 25 plan very thoroughly. And also, as you heard, we had a presentation on the paratransit peer review that was very robust, much like our conversation here tonight. Our next meeting, Wednesday, 10/9/24. Be there or be square.
Thank you, Committee Chair Whitmore. Next is the Performance Committee report. Committee Chair Catlin, do you have anything you'd like to report?
Thank you, Chair Davidson. The committee has met a couple of times. We're continuing our work on developing the 360 assessment tool. I believe that we have settled on reviewers for that 360 tool. There will be a meeting on Thursday to go over the random selection process for external reviewers as well as direct reports. The board has 3 reviewers that will be selected, and it was decided that Chair Davidson and I would select those reviewers, and we were looking at this with an eye toward the future, not just this year. And we thought that the best way to move forward would be to have the committee chairs, that being the chair of finance, the chair of operations and safety and security, and the chair of performance, be the initial 360 reviewers, bearing in mind that these 360 reviews were not prescriptive, they were really meant to inform. So I have asked the chairs of the committees, that being Tisdale and Whitmore, if they would kindly participate in this 360 review process, and they agreed. I was reluctant to self-appoint and had asked Chair or Vice Chair Geisinger if she would like to be acting in my stead, and she is very occupied right now with some other matters, and so she suggested that I go ahead and assume my role as chair. So the three reviewers again will be, and thank you for agreeing to participate in this, will be Tisdale, Whitmore, and myself. Again, we have a meeting Thursday to talk a little bit more about that, and we have some subsequent meetings to refine the actual questions that will go into the 360 review. In the meeting minutes, you can find a schedule of activities. RKL is proceeding with their work on this, and we've received a number of presentations, both on the 360 review process as well as the compensation review analysis. So if you'd like to review those, that information, feel free to go to the board packet. Thank you.
Thank you, Committee Chair Catlin. I see Director Whitmore, your hand's raised. Please go ahead.
Just one added note, if Jack would remind us of a deadline for all board members in this process is rapidly approaching.
Thank you. Mr. Kroll?
Yeah, fortunately, I don't have a microphone that works right now. But yes, we emailed out, so there are two things that
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah, hold for a mic.
Sorry to do that. No, that's fine.
Please go
There are
ahead.
issues with the microphones in this room, as we have noticed, and we actually believe that it might be relative to the frequency that they use. It's the only thing we can figure out. We've tested them in a number of places, but that's neither here nor there. There is two processes that are occurring concurrently here, and I don't want directors to get confused. There's the 360, and then there's the final assessment of the GM and CEO. Last week, I emailed to all directors and the GM and CEO a draft board assessment that you all will complete subsequent to the 360. So only a select number of directors are completing the 360 and providing feedback there, but all directors will complete the final assessment form, or rather have an opportunity to do so. I emailed that draft assessment to you all for review and input, and that we are asking for your feedback on no later than October 2nd.
Thank you, Mr. Kroll, for offering the additional context and feedback there. All right, we'll now move on from the committee reports. We'll move to the approval of the board meeting minutes and committee reports. The board and committee minutes were included in the board packet. Are there any corrections from directors for the minutes to be approved this evening? Okay, unless there is any objection to considering the minutes all at the same time, I will ask for a motion to approve the minutes for the following meetings. Board of Directors Special Board Meeting, July 30th, 2024. Board of Directors Board Meeting, July 30th, 2024. Board of Directors Special Board Meeting, August 2nd, 2024. Performance Committee, August 8th, 2024. Performance Committee, September 9th, 2024. Finance and Planning Committee, September 10th, 2024. Operations, Safety and Security Committee, September 11th, 2024. Performance Committee, September 16th, 2024. Board of Directors Study Session, September 18th, 2024. Executive Committee, September 19th, 2024. And Executive Committee, September 20th, 2024.
So moved, Tisdale.
A second?
Second, Geisinger.
I have Tisdale as the movement, Geisinger as the second. Any discussion? Are there any no votes? Seeing none, I do need to take stock of what our current attendance is, as I'm not seeing the online Zoom.
Believe so, yeah. We lost, I think, Bouquet. No, Bouquet is still here. So we have Catlin and Bouquet online, plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, so I think you're 13.
13, okay, thank you. It's just not seeing all directors up there. Great, thank you. That's 13 aye votes, 0 no votes, and 2 absent. That will pass. All right, at this time, we'll move to the chair's report, followed by the general manager's report. So first of all, I'd like to start by thanking General Manager and CEO Johnson and the entire team for the continued efforts navigating challenges and opportunities this year in 2024. A particular thank you, as we got to hear in public comment, to the RTD Maintenance of Way team for the continued resilience and hard work into the night, moving quickly and persistently adapting to RTD's increased preventative maintenance standards introduced over the summer. Thank you to all of those on the RTD impact teams as well, those who have volunteered to join the impact teams out in the field to directly help customers navigating many of these challenges. And thank you to all involved for the expedient and ahead of schedule completion of our coping panel maintenance, as well as the downtown rail reconstruction, which is complete despite many of the maintenance challenges that we had faced over this summer. So I thank you to the entire team for making that possible and working together. And on a related note, I would once again like to thank our customers and members of the public for their continued patience and resilience through this summer and in an important time when RTD is taking on deferred but essential maintenance to ensure that the system is not just here for us, but is here for generations to come, is well taken care of and safe. We are working at RTD to serve you, the customers, as best as we possibly can. We are learning from our mistakes. We are doubling down where we are strong. We are listening, and we thank you for continuing to stick with us and move around throughout the system. I'd like to highlight for my colleagues and members of the public a few highlights from our September board briefing document stating some things around the state of the agency. As of July 2024, RTD's year-to-date sales and use tax revenue stood at $487.4 million. That is 6.7% below the budgeted $522.4 million. Sales and use tax, for reference, is effectively flat versus last year and is up 0.1%. On the expense side, year-to-date operating expenses as of July 2024 stood at $442.1 million, which is 13.9% below the budgeted $513.4. So we don't have any concerns related to the shortcomings in sales and use tax, but I think I would speak for all of us in saying we should pay attention to where those trends are relative to the forecasts that this board considers as we adopt and contemplate budgets. As some additional things to highlight, as of July 2024, year-to-date ridership was at 41.2 million boardings. That's 7.3% below budget, although it is 5.3% growth up over last year. Bus operations in July 2024 had a service availability of 99.69% and on-time performance of 81.18%. Light rail operations in July 2024 had a service availability of 99.13% and on-time performance of 71.23%. That is notably down due to the track maintenance, as previously mentioned, related to our slow zones. For reference, the year-to-date on-time performance for light rail stands at 85.8% as of July. Commuter rail operations in July 2024 had service availability of over 98%, and on-time performance of the A, B, and G were 93.8%, and the N line was 97.6%. For reference, year-to-date on-time performance is 95.6% and 97% respectively. I'd also like to address and thank all of those in our people operations and human resources for the tremendous work that's been done working on our recruitment and retention. RTD's light rail operator vacancy ratio as of July 2024 was at 15% with 30 vacancies. That's a market improvement. The bus operator vacancy as of July 2024 was 4.73% with 45 vacancies. So once again, thank you to the work that's been done there. I'd also like to acknowledge the outreach that RTD continues to do and thank our team for continuing to measure that and report on that. There are many things that we participate in, but our direct engagement stands at 27,120 customers and members of the public year to date. Thank you for that continued engagement and taking that approach. I'll wrap here by letting my colleagues know a few things here. First of all, I'd just like to let the board know of a few changes to our external entities appointments at the end of the year here on the board. The updated primaries serving and attending the Denver Regional Council of Governments Regional Transportation Committee are now Directors Broom, Busick, and Guzman. The alternates are now Directors Harwick, Ruscia, and Whitmore. I wanted to just highlight that for everybody to be aware. Once again, thank you to the entire team at RTD, board, staff, and all of our customers for perseverance and teamwork through the summer. And finally, I'll highlight for directors and members of the public, I look forward to joining our General Manager and CEO Johnson tomorrow to present to the Transportation Legislation Review Committee for RTD's annual presentation. So with that, I'll conclude my remarks and report. I'd like to hand off now to our General Manager and CEO, Deborah Johnson, to please share her report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Once again, Deborah Johnson, good evening. And I would like to thank you on behalf of all employees for the acknowledgement of the work that you to amplify the acknowledgement that you just As I was trying to say, thanks on behalf of all of us. We appreciate it. So this evening, I will share a few highlights of activities and strategic endeavors since our most recent monthly board meeting on Tuesday, July 30th. The report activities that I cite will basically be centered around our strategic priorities and our strategic initiatives. So as I fast forward relating to community value, on Wednesday, July 31st, I engaged in a policy forum held by the Boulder Chamber of Commerce as the forum's keynote speaker. My remarks focused on the new transit landscape and operational realities across the industry, transit services being delivered to Boulder, policy changes that emerged from the 2024 state legislative session, and information related to the Northwest Rail Peak Service feasibility study. Boulder Mayor Aaron Brockett, Boulder County Commissioner Claire Levy, and Representative Julie of Model A also participated in the forum. And of course, you, Mr. Chair, and our second vice chair were in attendance as well. So thank you very much for your support. On Thursday, August 1st, staff participated on my behalf in a virtual interview with representatives from the U.S. Government Accountability Office. The interview was part of the GAO's information gathering efforts related to commuter rail funding and operations as a follow-up to the 2021 commuter rail report. It's important to note, as was discussed at our study session that we had last week, that there is not a direct federal funding mechanism for commuter rail, unlike there is for intercity passenger rail. And so that's why the GAO has basically leaned into this, recognizing that I did have the opportunity last year to represent my colleagues across the country in commuter rail service delivery to testify before a subcommittee of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee about this point. In relation to this effort, the GAO staff were specifically interested in discerning how commuter rail operations and funding sources have changed since the COVID-19 pandemic, and how commuter rail agencies measure operating cost efficiency, and how, if at all, efficiency has changed since the COVID-19 pandemic. Later that day, I, along with Director Tisdale and Rosenthal and members of my team, attended the Denver Business Journal 25th Annual Outstanding Women in Business Awards Celebration Dinner, where I was humbled to be recognized as a 2024 awardee. The event celebrates women business leaders who drive change, deliver results, and inspire their communities within the Denver metro region. I, along with members of staff, as well as Chair Davidson, participated in a legislative audit committee meeting on Monday, August 5th. During this meeting, representatives of the Office of the State Auditor presented findings and recommendations derived from a fiscal governance audit of RTD performed between June 2023 and July 2024. The audit covered topics ranging from cost efficiency metrics, capital asset projects, and budget filing requirements to strategic plan updates and the onboarding of new board members. During this meeting, OSA staff reported that RTD had met all 9 of the state's financial health ratios, and RTD agreed to implement recommendations related to process enhancements and data reporting, among other elements. On Tuesday, August 27th, I participated in a panel discussion that took place during the 8th Annual Sustainable Transportation Summit hosted by Commuting Solutions, which was held in Longmont. I was joined on the panel by Dennis Newman, Amtrak's Executive Vice President of Strategy and Planning, Chris Nevitt, the Chair of the Front Range Passenger Rail District Board of Directors, and Westminster Mayor Nancy McNally. The panel was moderated by Andy Carcian, who serves as the General Manager of the Front Range Passenger Rail District, and panelists discussed the future of passenger rail service delivery to the Northwest Corridor and collaboration among RTD, the Front Range Passenger Rail District, as well as the Colorado Department of Transportation. Governor Jared Polis, CDOT Executive Director Shoshana Liu, Longmont Mayor Joan Peck, Senate President Z. Finberg, and Sound Transit's Director of Government Community Relations, Katie Druhl, also participated. On Wednesday, August 28th, I, along with members of staff, and many of you sitting around this dais, also attended the 2024 Denver Regional Council of Governments Award celebration. This annual celebration recognizes individuals for their distinguished service to the region, as well as individual contributors, projects, programs, and collaborations that have advanced progress toward the region's MetroVision goals. The agency received recognition for the system-wide fair study and equity analysis, and I was proud to join Bill Soroy, who serves as our Senior Manager of Transit-Oriented Communities, and Carl Green Jr., Director of Civil Rights, on stage to accept the award on RTD's behalf. On Friday, September 13th, I traveled to Portland, Oregon to support our own Director and Secretary, Michael Guzman, who was there to give his capstone project presentation as a member of the 2024 class of Latinos in Transit Leadership Academy, or we call it LITLA. Academy participants gained an in-depth understanding of public transportation and learned about management practices, finance, procurement, labor relations, and regulatory compliance. In his research efforts, Director Guzman worked alongside Director Ramiro Navarro Jr. from the Salem Area Mass Transit District, also known as Chariots, and their work focused on best practices for orientation and onboarding of new transit board members. The outcome of their research has now informed RTD's own onboarding and orientation planning efforts for the incoming class of soon-to-be elected board members later this year. The following day, on Tuesday, August 6th, I engaged with participants in the Mineta Leadership Academy, an immersive 3-day leadership program that was held here at the Blake Street Administrative Offices. The Mineta Transportation Institute, for those of you that are not aware, is a research body focused on transit, or issues, I should say, related to intermodal surface transportation in the United States, and is part of San Jose State University's Lucas Graduate School of Business. The Institute's Leadership Academy is devoted to developing exceptional public sector leaders to serve the transportation industry. And this gets back to a question that Director Lewis asked during Performance Committee, I believe, about how we're investing in individuals relative to organizational development. The Academy provides individuals in mid-level to senior management positions with opportunities to improve leadership skills, enhance their leadership competencies, and work with peers and mentors in the transportation industry. In total, 27 RTD employees were able to participate in this professional development opportunity, and I'm proud to serve as a leadership fellow to the Mineta Transportation Institute. The rail, snow plow, and bus rodeos were held on Saturday, August 10th, Friday, August 23rd, and Saturday, September 14th, respectively. Witnessing operators, mechanics, and service workers testing their skills in the heat of competition is always a thrill for me. These annual competitions allow employees incredible passion for their work to shine through, and I thoroughly enjoy taking part in these festivities each year. My congratulations to this year's participants and to the winners of each event. Moreover, I extend my gratitude to all those who participated and to the volunteers who made each event a success, and my special thanks to those directors that were able to pop in and show their support of our colleagues who work very diligently each and every day. So with that, Mr. Chair, I conclude my report and I yield the floor to you. Thanks.
Thank you very much, General Manager, CEO. Director Lewis, a question?
Yeah, I just want to make a comment. I thought the workshop we did last week with the North Rail and your staff was fantastic. It was finally, I think, became clear for all of us exactly where we stand and what the other parties have to do to make this work, possibly. But I just wanted to extend my thank you to staff because that was a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Director Lewis. General Manager?
I just want to say thank you very much for that acknowledgement, because I share it with them. They knocked it out of the park, because it was all the work that has been going on for the past like 20 months for all intents and purposes, and just coming together. And I really think it showcased our mindset here of a one RTD approach, as opposed to departments doing things not interdependently, but I should say in a siloed fashion. So I appreciate that acknowledgement that was very visible. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Director. Thank you. Completely agreed. Excellent session. You might say we have developed a common set of facts. With that, we will thank you very much for your report, General Manager, CEO Johnson. As always, appreciate the update. We will now move to the unanimous consent portion of the agenda. There are 4 items on the unanimous consent agenda listed as actions A, B, C, and D. Those are A, 29th and Welton property disposition time extension, B, 2025 to 2029 5-year financial forecast, or FIFE, C, near-term downtown rail reconstruction legal services contract amendment, and D, approval of budget transfer for wheel truing machine replacement. If anyone has a change to or discussion or questions about these items, please feel free to advise me at this time, and I'm happy to pull it from the unanimous consent for consideration under recommended action. All right, seeing none, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Moved. So moved, Tisdale.
And Whitmore as the movement, and the second as Tisdale. Are there any no votes on this action? All right, seeing none, with 13 ayes, 0 no, and 2 absent, that motion will pass. We'll now move to the recommended action portion of our agenda. There are 4 recommended actions on the agenda. These are listed as E, F, G, and H. The first action is item E. This is for the Federal Lobbying Services Contract scope of work. First of all, I should clarify that many of these recommended actions, including this one, did come through Executive Committee, and as per our bylaws, anything comes through Executive Committee, even if it is unanimous, does come before the board here. So this first item is for the Board of Directors to approve the summary scope of work for a solicitation and to subsequently authorize the General Manager and CEO to enter into a contract for federal lobbying services. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Rosenthal.
Second.
I heard Rosenthal, the movement, and second is Harwick, I believe. All right, any questions on this matter? We're joined by Mr. Michael Davies. Yes, Director Tisdale, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. A note of clarification, as the recommended action reads, this is not simply the approval of the summary scope of work for the solicitation. It is the authorization then for the general manager to select a lobbyist and to enter into that contract, whereas our delegation resolution does not provide for that. So it's a change from that. And I just want to emphasize that for the sake of the record, in case anybody may have missed that. They probably didn't, and I'm probably exaggerating the point, but I think it's worth noting.
Thank you, Director Tisdale, for the note. And yes, for clarification, that is the intent of the recommended action, is to approve the summary of work, then enter the solicitation, go through the procurement process, and yes, ultimately enter into that contract. That is correct. All right, seeing no further questions, are there any no votes?
No.
We have one no vote. Director Tisdale? Seeing no further no votes, that is 12 aye votes, 1 no vote, and that will pass. Thank you, Mr. Davies, for joining us. We will now move to our second item. This is item F. This is Board Operating Guidelines amendments regarding communication with staff and clerical matters. This is for the Board of Directors to adopt amendments to the Board Operating Guidelines regarding communication with staff and additional substantive and copy edits. Do I have a motion?
So moved, Guzman.
A second?
Second, Whitmore.
I have Guzman as the movement, the second as Whitmore. Any discussion? Yes, Director Sloan.
Yes, thank you. And Ms. Chair Davidson, I appreciate the opportunity to speak. And I also appreciate there's been considerable work that has gone into these amendments to the operating guidelines. I approve the idea that it's mutual respect between staff and board members, and the intent is commendable. But I would like to make a few comments on the wording, and this particularly goes to packet page 126 through 127. Unquestionably, staff are the transit experts. They know transit and we can rely on them. But also, board members, on the other hand, are regarded as the pipeline to our constituents. And as this acknowledges, we are committed to dialogue with our constituents. It's an important part of the board members' job, particularly since we are elected board members. And so with that in mind, and under that lens, I would like to make some comments on the language on page 127. For instance, the first bullet point is a great idea to have ideas go through the board office and have board track it. I would like to see on a commitment of getting a response to the board members as well as tracking. And in fact, in some circumstances, to have the board member who raised it participate in the discussion of the item that came up. Another is to communicate when practical with the GM CEO when direct staff communications are necessary or desired. We have carried around this yellow card that shows numbers for the senior leadership team since our service on the board. It seems, yes, the GM CEO should be involved in these discussions, but I also believe board members should be permitted to have direct staff communications with the senior leadership team. Another is to focus requests and inquiries on matters that inform policy decisions. You know, we all understand our role as directors, but as elected directors, we get questions from stakeholders and customers who experience RTD at bus stops, train stations, on bus seats and train seats along routes that they are experiencing. They know that we have been elected and expect a response on those issues. So focusing on matters of policy does not fit with that part of the board's role. And finally, seems like there was something else. And anyway, in sum, I believe the current guidelines do not minimize that aspect of the board member's role, and that this does. And for that reason, I am going to vote no, because these would interfere with board effectiveness in serving their constituents. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Sloan, for the comments. If I may react briefly, I think it's important for us to look at what the board operating guidelines are and what they're not. And, you know, considerable thought went into this. The board operating guidelines are not a bylaw. That this is really a commitment, and it starts with a board commitment that does state that we're committed to public transit and the strategic goals of the Regional Transportation District. And from there on, everything falls out regarding how we commit to show up. And I think what, you know, we encountered here, there's a number of things that have been drafted prior to us and updated while we've been here regarding governance and policy setting, regarding meeting efficiency, communication during meetings, etc. What we have added here is, I think we just have we can ignore the voting on the screen. But what we have here was adding how we show up with respect to communicating with staff. And what we had talked about in executive committee when we went through this was that there were opportunities to leverage the agency response system that the board office has created in recognition that we have 15 directors all sending in requests, oftentimes through very different means of communication. And what we identified was a way to help our board office in organizing those communications and structuring those and bringing them back to us. I think one of the most important things that we could do with the agency response system is contained within the final bullet of the new section that was added on packet page 127, which is to review on a semi-annual basis the volume and nature of requests being sent by staff or to staff by the board. And that the agency response system gives us the ability to do that, so we can partner with our board office and help them. With regards to the communication with staff, again, I think it's important for us to be mindful that we're 15 directors and we have hired a general manager and CEO that we delegate authority to. And sometimes the comparison has been made around a mayor and a city manager, and that we work to, when practical, bring those communications to the general manager and CEO, or those that she delegates and designates to whom the board would communicate. So I wanted to make very clear that that item is meant to afford the flexibility to both board and general manager and CEO to make sure that we are partnering with each other and dialoguing about communications that are appropriate. I would suggest that this would make a good standing retreat topic when it comes to having 14 board members and one general manager and CEO to agree upon those things. But I did just want to highlight, and Director Sloan, I hear the concerns, and I think they're very well stated in terms of our role in engaging with the public. The genesis of this was more around how the board shows up and how we communicate and organize our communications with staff. So I just wanted to state that intent and completely understand the disagreement on perspectives. Second Vice Chair Geisinger, please.
Thank you very much. I hear both of your positions. I had occasion to have this conversation with Ms. Johnson somewhat today and with the chair. I also share some concerns. I think I also was talking with the transportation staff of some of my communities today, and I think there are needs that aren't answered by these guidelines. And I agree with you, it needs to go back to the retreat. I may join, I'm wavering on where I vote here. But as you've all heard, I've had concerns about this issue for a while. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further comments? Questions? Okay. I'm going to call a roll vote on this. Give me a moment to pull that up. Treasurer Bouquet.
Yes.
Director Broom.
No.
Director Busick.
Yes.
First Vice Chair Catlin.
Yes.
Second Vice Chair Geisinger.
No.
Secretary Guzman.
Yes.
Director Harwick.
Yes.
Director Lewis.
Yes.
Director Rosenthal.
Yes.
Director Sloan.
No.
Director Tisdale.
Yes.
Director Whitmore.
Yes.
And this is Chair Davidson. I am a yes. That is 10 yes, 3 no, and the remainder are absent. That will pass. Thank you. Yes, agreed. Good discussion. We will now move on to our next recommended action. This is item G, support of ballot measure 6A and delegation of Director Tisdale to vote on 6A on RTD's behalf. This is for the Board of Directors to adopt a position of support on City and County of Denver ballot question 6A, and for the Board of Directors to designate Director Douglas Tisdale to cast RTD's vote on 6A. Do I have a motion?
So
Motion,
Guzman.
Lewis.
I heard Guzman as the movement, Lewis as the second. Is there any discussion on this? Yes, Director Harwick, please.
I just have a conflict of interest. Not maybe, I just more it's a question if I have one. If the DDA passes, there are potentially projects that I will not like sign off on, but will affect me in my day job that I may be advocating for. So I just want to confirm that I'm okay to vote yes on this. And if I'm not, I just need to make sure I'm abstaining correctly.
General Counsel, I see you. Would you like to go ahead?
Yes, Director Harwick, I think you're clear to vote on this, but just for future reference, to the extent you have any director has any questions about whether you have a conflict, just consult me in advance. And then also you wouldn't, if you're going to abstain, you would just abstain from the outset and you wouldn't talk about the nature of your conflict.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Not seeing other questions, I just would defer. We had a good presentation on this from Director Tisdale and some discussion around it at the executive committee. that is worth a look. At this time, I'll ask, are there any no votes? Okay, seeing none, that's 13 yes, 0 no, that will pass. And the final action, H, is for the ratification of the appointment of Director Jamie Lewis to the Performance Committee. This is for the Board of Directors to ratify my appointment as Chair of Director Jamie Lewis to the Performance Committee pursuant to its vacancy. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Tisdale.
I have Tisdale as the move-in and Catlin as the second. Any discussion? Thank you, Director Lewis, for being willing to fill the position that was recently made vacant. Are there any no votes? All right, seeing none, that will be 13 yes, 0 no, and that will pass. All right, at this time we'll go to report of director activities. Would anyone like to report on their activities for August or September? I thought so. Secretary Guzman, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It is National Hispanic Heritage Month, and so the Latinos in Transit community has their summit. It is announced that they will be doing their summit next year in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm looking forward to that. But this year, with a lot of help, and thank you to the board office staff who helped me, to Stuart Summers and to Madam General Manager, CEO, who both helped me connect with the right people, advised the research that I was working on with Director Ramiro Navarro, and to all the staff for their time and their insistence on getting this right, which I am grateful for, and the participation of directors across the country. And when I say across the country, I mean north, south, east, and west. We had a lot of work going on to figure out how to onboard, train, welcome, orient new directors into boards. And that research took a long time. A very healthy report was given out, and presentation was given at the Academy Capstone presentations in Portland at our last summit. I was delightfully surprised to have our general manager, CEO there in support, and very grateful for her presence and all the help that she gave me. But I would be super remiss not to say thank you for helping with formatting PowerPoints and detail reading of drafting and getting that work done, which also helped to get some other work done that will be forthcoming to this board in terms of future policy for how we're gonna bring on new directors. I would like to report to all of you, to no surprise it should come, we are well trained to do the function of directing in this agency. Being one of the last 3 agencies that have directors who are elected directly to their positions, this agency serves us very well in that capacity. And while there's always room for improvement, and we have made a policy, I hope, going forward that will assist us in being both flexible and clear in what we do, we're not out in the dark, and we're not waiting a year or 2 to get trained and to get onboarded as servants of the public and fiduciaries of the agency and governors, a board of directors. And so I think a lot of that is a big round of applause and thank you to all of our staff who have helped us in that process, who guide us, who we lean on because of their expertise and their knowledge. And so to all of you, thank you. When you have stepped up to teach us, it's really important. And when you have taught us what has changed in practice and in transit, it's important. I would really like to take the opportunity, if I may, just to really remind everybody we have a unique opportunity which is not offered to directors at many agencies, which is to attend some of these conferences, APTA, COMTO, LIT, Latinos in Transit, and we have policies in place that allow us to do that. Reimbursements for the travel, the ability to have those conferences registered for us ahead of time, to save money, to do it early, and to do it through the board office to kind of alleviate the stress of trying to find these things and do it. And they are awesome opportunities to learn so much. For the public, that might sound interesting, but it is an investment in knowledge and capacity building for your directors who come here to do the work that we do day in and day out. It's not a vacation. I can tell you that very clearly. It is a lot of work. to do these conferences and to participate and to be ready to present on some of those issues. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And super glad that I had the opportunity to do that because I represented, I think, Denver well and RTD even better. But I did not do it alone. I knew who I walked in with, and it's all 3,000 of our employees that were behind me in that presentation and the help of about 12 other agencies nationally in cooperation with all of your help. So thank you.
Thank you, Secretary, and thank you for the work on that. We did have a chance at Executive Committee to look at a new forthcoming policy here on our training, and very much appreciate the work that you've brought to the board here on that. Other directors? All right, seeing none, go to other matters. Are there any other matters to discuss? Okay, seeing none, before I ask for the motion to enter executive session, I just would like to remind everybody that our next board meeting will be Tuesday, October 22nd, and I look forward to seeing you all at that time. We're now going to move to the executive session portion of the agenda. In a moment, the board will meet in executive session to receive legal advice and discuss positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations regarding a potential amendment to the GM CEO employment agreement. I would like to append the motion to move into executive session to state that the board meeting will be deemed adjourned after it adjourns into executive session. For public transparency, this means that once the board moves into executive session, the main meeting will be adjourned. I will now entertain a motion to move into executive session to discuss the following: executive session pursuant to Section 246402 4B CRS to receive legal advice, and Section 246402 4E CRS for determining positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations regarding a potential amendment to GM CEO employment agreement.
Busick, so moved.
Busick is the movement. The second is Tisdale. Are there any opposed? Seeing none, with 13 in favor, that will pass. For all those expected to attend, please make sure we will take a brief break to get set up and transition over. Please be here at 9:05 p.m. And we will get started. For everybody else, please vacate the room at this time, take your belongings with you, and we'll transition as quickly as possible. Thank you.